Grand Rising, Grand Rising.
Grand Rise. I hope everyone's doing fine. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's all right. Peace, y'all. Peace. Short and sweet.
Cool. Give us some ones if you can hear us clearly. If everybody's volume is coming through. Matter of fact, let me turn this down a little bit. All right. Peace, Trap. Hope everything's going well with you in the city of, well, in the state of Florida.
I'm gonna say Grand Rising, Fort Lauderdale in the Broward County area.
All right. So y'all about ready to get started?
Like we always do about this time.
All right. So yesterday we ended up talking about Greenwood LaFleur. His father was a French Canadian who actually worked for a company called Patton Leslie and Company, and this company was a trading company, and they were involved in trading with the Bahamas and Native Americans, and for the fur trade. Excuse me. So he is a father of Greenwood LaFleur, and his mother. What's her name? We know she's a daughter of a chief, Chief Push Mataha. So at the end of the day, LaFleur's, her name is Rebecca Cravat. Cravat. That's what you say it? Cravat? Anyway.
Yeah, that's
Now, Cravat does not sound like an Indian name. So we're gonna tackle that too.
yeah. We gotta remember too. Gotta remember sometimes Indians had 3, 4 names depending on who they were dealing with.
Well, that's true. So also I'm gonna put they don't have anything on her. They got something on his grandfather. Pushmataha. Pushmataha. So I'll put this in the back chat. Matter of fact, let's start with Pushmataha. I'm sorry for deviating, but sometimes we got to go that route. We'll get to the other chief later, but I wanna talk about Pushmataha. That now just rolls off the tongue so eloquently. Don't ask me to spell it though. Makes me think. It makes me think of Pusher Man T from Taiwan area. Shout out to Pusher Man T. Anyway, ooh, you see that last name? His last name is Apushmataha Hubi or Hubby. It's Apusham Mataha Hubi. Ooh, that's a mouthful. So, Pushmataha is actually what's his name? Greenwood LaFleur's grandfather. So He is the Indian general, and he was one of the original. He was one of the three regional chiefs of the major divisions of the Choctaw in the 19th century. Many historians consider him the greatest of Choctaw chiefs. Pushmataha was highly regarded among Native Americans, Europeans, and white Americans for his skill and cunning in both war and diplomacy. So let's start right there. He was highly regarded among not only the Native Americans, the Europeans, but also white Americans. So you notice how they separate Europeans from white Americans. So these would probably be some of your native-born Europeans or your native-born Americans whose ancestors were Europeans. Yes.
Yeah, because remember we talked about them. The first set of people that was born here that was neither Indian but nor colonizer.
Exactly. So
your first Native Americans by definition to be correct.
Exactly. Right. Grand Rising, Pamela Hall. Hope all is well.
Peace.
So
Peace, Pamela.
he has high regard from three distinct groups of people. And it says, rejecting the offers of alliance and the reconquest preferred by Tecumseh. Remember when they talked about Tecumseh wanted to sign with the want to link up with some of the tribes to fight the Europeans?
Yep.
So apparently Pushmataha was one of the key reasons why it didn't happen. It says Pushmataha led the Choctaw to fight on the side of the United States in the War of 1812. He negotiated several treaties with the United States. In 1824, he traveled to Washington to petition the federal government against the cessions of Choctaw land. He met with John C. Calhoun and Marquis de Lafont, and his portrait was painted by Charles Byrd King. He died in the capital city and was buried with full military honors in the Congressional Cemetery in Washington D.C. So he's buried in a...
Did he go there to die? I'm just saying. I mean, you visit Washington D.C. and say died in D.C. I mean, come on, son. You had funeral preparations going on already for yourself?
Look, man, I don't know. He was born in 1764 in Macon, Mississippi, and he died December 24th, 1824 in Washington, D.C. So I don't know. They haven't said what the cause of death was.
It was some sort of itis. I did see that. It was swelling of the trachea. What was it called?
Okay,
laryngotracheobronchitis.
Sounds like something that could be, again, so I'm speculating. I ain't got no proof, but it sounds like a form of poison, or he was allergic to something.
Yeah, it says it's usually caused by a virus. So yeah. Croup. Croup is his cause of death. Croup.
Okay.
Croup. Okay. Don't catch the croup.
Yeah, don't catch that croup. Let me joke.
So for those of you who are just joining us, we sent you the homework for the chief, Mushala Tubi, but we detoured. And if you look in the back chat, if you look in the chat, you'll see we're on Pushmataha, who's actually the father of Greenwood LaFleur,
also known as Pusha Matthews.
Are you serious?
Yeah, they split his name up.
Might as well.
But wait a minute, didn't you say? But didn't I say he sounds like Pusha T? So he's Pusha Matthews. Okay.
Look, Pusha. Yeah, what's it? Pusha Mataha.
Yeah.
Pusha Mataha. Pusha Wataha.
Yeah, you see the last one they got like the Pusha Matthew.
Pusha Matthew. Pusha Matha. Yeah, Pusha Matha. They got his name Pusha Matha. Pusha Matha.
And they just split it in half. Ain't that so? They split his name in half and made it a first and last name.
They got him a first and last name. Pusha Matha. I push up on my tahabu.
What? I ain't fooling with no shout out.
Anyway, Pusha Mataha's early life is poorly documented. His parents are unknown, possibly killed in a raid by a neighboring tribe. Pusha Mataha never spoke of his ancestors. A legend of his origin was told. Wait a minute. That doesn't even sound right. That doesn't sound tribal. It says his parents were possibly killed in a raid by a neighboring tribe. Pusha Mataha never spoke of his ancestors. A legend of his origin was told. A little cloud was once seen in the northern sky. It came before a rushing wind and covered the Choctaw County country with darkness. Out of it flew an angry fire. It struck a large oak and scattered its limbs and its trunk all along the ground. And from that spot sprung forth a warrior, fully armed for war. Most historians agree that he was born in 1764 in the Noma Manor near the future site of Macon, Mississippi. When he was 13, Pushmataha fought in a war against the Creek people. Some sources report that he was given an early warrior name of Eagle, better attested to his participation in wars with the Osage and Caddo tribes west of the Mississippi River in 1784 and 1789. He served as a warrior in other conflicts into the first decade of the 1800s, and by then his reputation as a warrior was made. These conflicts were due to depletion of traditional deer hunting grounds of the Choctaw around their holy site, Nahiwaya. Population had increased the area, and competition among tribes over the fur trade with Europeans exacerbated violent conflict. The Choctaw raided traditional hunting grounds of other tribes for deer. Pushmataha's raids extended into the territories that would become the states of Arkansas and Oklahoma. His experience and knowledge of the lands would prove invaluable for later negotiations with the United States government for those same lands. Interesting, to say the very least.
Yeah, I'm waiting until we get down to it because I want to know who originally lived on that land out there, in Oklahoma. That's what I'm waiting to get to.
Okay. Yeah.
A whole lot of people out west, but nobody to be out west.
Yeah. Capanio just sent a message in the back chat. I want to send condolences to him and his family. We was trying to get him on today, but that won't be possible. But we just want to send a shout out to him and his family, and we'll send positive vibes to you. If you need anything, brother, just let us know.
Let's call us, my brother. Call us. Let us know. Sorry to hear that.
So early life, we already talked about that. 6 other towns. It says 6 other chief of the 6 towns district. It says by 1800, Pushmataha was recognized as a military and spiritual leader, and he was chosen as the Mingo chief of the Akla Hanali, or 6 towns district of the Choctaw. One of 3 in Choctaw tribe, this covered the southern part of the territory, primarily in Mississippi. His sharp logic, humorous wit, and lyrical, eloquent speaking style quickly earned him a renown in councils. Pushmataha rapidly took a central position in diplomacy, first meeting with United States envoys at Fort Confederation in 1802. Pushmataha negotiated a Treaty of Mount Dexter with the United States on November 16, 1805, and met Thomas Jefferson during his terms as president. So let's go back up. It said this, according to legend. Again, take it with a grain of salt. They have high regard. When I say they, the Europeans and the Native Americans have high regard for him, along with the American Indians. So take this with a grain of salt, because some things can be embellished upon. But let's just say they said he was in his first war at 13. Forget at 13. Let's just say 17, because we know in the military, in the United States, you can join the military at 17. They said this dude was already a fierce warrior at 17, at 13. But like I said, let's just say 17. That's serious. They ain't nothing to play with. He not and they won't using paintballs.
No, sir. Make a mistake. That's a scar.
Or lost a limb.
You know, ain't no hoops.
So I mean that's I know that's significant. So
Wow.
I don't know. That's just, I mean, but just marinate on that for a second. 13 years old. Like I said, even if he wasn't 13, 17, I joined the military at the age of 17, but I didn't go until 18 because I had to graduate from high school first. But I know at 18 I want no daggone warrior. That much I do know. Um, so just take that into consideration. So let's talk about the War of 1812. Early in 1811, Tecumseh garnered support for his British-backed attempt to recover lands from the United States settlers. As chief for the 6 town districts, Pushmataha strongly resisted such a plan, pointing out that the Choctaw and their neighbors, the Chickasaw, had always lived in peace with European Americans and learned valuable skills and technology, and had received honest treatment and fair trade. The Joint Choctaw Chickasaw Council voted against alliance with Tecumseh. When Tecumseh departed, Pushmataha accused him of tyranny over his own Shawnee tribe and other tribes. He warned Tecumseh that he would fight against those who fought the United States. So here's the thing that I find interesting based off of what is stated. Again, take with a grain of salt, and we'll have to definitely consult with Doodle Vision because
Oh,
Choctaws
you
is
talking about
strapped.
that they always live comfortably around Europeans?
Exactly. How you
I
know I
got
was gonna
you
go
too.
there? How you know I was gonna go there? That word
We gotta get out of
always,
each other's head. I'm like,
always.
hold up, flag, 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 flag. Am I hearing this? Said always live comfortably around them. How long is
See,
always to these people? I need to
exactly.
know.
Always lived in peace with European
Maybe time,
Americans.
maybe time frames are.
So, because this is 1811, so you figure the 1700s, 1776, they gained their independence. 1776. So you figure they got to the early the north what is the Tidewater area in Virginia in 1704. So you figure it's 100 years. So for him, that probably would be always. Again, I'm speculating. I don't know, but I mean, that's a long time to be saying always, though. For real, I don't consider 100 years always. I mean, can somebody let me know something? Because I could be definitely missing
That's
something.
about always.
Yeah, 100 years is not always, but that stuck out. That definitely stuck out to me. Um, With the outbreak of war, Pushmataha led the Choctaw in alliance with the United States. He argued against the Creek alliance with Britain after the massacre of Fort Mims. In mid-1830, Pushmataha went to St. Stephen's, Alabama with an offer of alliance and recruitment of warriors. He was escorted to Mobile to speak with General Flournoy, then commanding the district. Flournoy initially declined Pushmataha's offer and offended the chief. Flournoy's staff quickly convinced the general to to reverse his decision. A courier carrying a message accepting Pushmataha's offer caught up with the chief at St. Stephen's. Returning to Choctaw territory, Pushmataha raised a company of 500 warriors. He was commissioned as either a lieutenant colonel or brigadier general in the United States Army at St. Stephen's. After observing that the officers and their wives would promenade along the Tombigbee River, Pushmataha invited his wife to St. Stephen's and took part in this custom. Under Brigadier General Fernando Claiborne, Pushmataha and 150 Choctaw warriors took part in an attack on Creek forces at the Battle of the Holy Ground, also known as Kantachi or Escanaka, on December 23, 1813. With this victory, Choctaw began to volunteer in greater numbers from the other 2 districts of the tribe. By February 1814, Pushmataha led a larger band of Choctaws and joined General Andrew Jackson's force to sweep the Creek territories near Pensacola. Many Choctaw departed after the final defeat of Creek at Horseshoe Bend. By the Battle of New Orleans, only a few Choctaw remained with the army. They were the only Native American tribe represented in the battle. Some sources say Pushmataha was among them, while others disagree. Another Choctaw division, Chief Bushlatubi, which is the link that I put in earlier, led about 50 of his warriors in this battle. Pushmataha was regarded as a strict war leader, marshaling his warriors with discipline. U.S. Army officers impressed with his leadership skills called him the Indian General. Anything you want to say, Bones? I know you're waiting for something.
He's standing in a double dutch.
No, I can't hear you. What was that?
I said I finished reading the inserts from the War of 1812, and it also mentioned the chief what's his name, Mushu Latubi, and it also talks about how the United States Army officers were impressed with Pushmataha's leadership skills and called him the Indian General. So I was wondering if you wanted me to read further, or there was something that you wanted to address in the War of 1812.
Oh no, you go further on it. I'm taking notes.
Okay. So let's talk about Principal Chief of the Choctaw. On his return from the wars, Pushmataha was elected paramount chief of the Choctaw Nation. A cultural conservative, Pushmataha resisted the effort of Protestant missionaries who arrived in Choctaw territory in 1818. So let's look at what a paramount chief is, because this is the first time I've heard of that.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
So I'm putting this in the chat as well. The definition of a paramount chief. So a paramount chief, it says not to be confused with paramount chieftain. Okay, so a paramount chief is a lord chief is the English language designation for the highest level political leader in a regional or local polity or country, administered politically with the chief-based system. This term is used occasionally in anthropological and archaeological theory to refer to the rulers of multiple chiefdoms or the rulers of exceptionally powerful chiefdoms that have subordinated others. Paramount chiefs are identified by English speakers as existing in Native American confederacies and regional chiefdoms such as Powhatan Confederacy and Piscataway Native Americans, encountered by English colonists in the Chesapeake Bay area of North America. More recently, Paramount Chief is a formal title created by British administrators during the 19th and 20th century colonial era and used in India, Africa, and Asian colonies. They use it as a substitute for the word king to maintain that only the British monarch held that title. Since the title chief was already used in terms of district and town administrators, the addition of paramount was made so as to distinguish between the ruling monarch and other local aristocracies. Grand Rising Marlon P. So we were just going over the definition of a paramount chief. So paramount chief is a title that the Brits gave, and it's
They didn't want to call nobody else king or queen.
right.
So the highest level political leader that they gave a name to.
Yeah. So it's saying you hide in your chiefs, but you lower than our king. That's basically what they're saying.
Yeah, we big king, you little.
Basically.
Chief-based system.
So it says, so now I'm back on Pushmataha. Pushmataha resisted the effort of Protestant missionaries who arrived in Choctaw territory in 1818. But he agreed with learning new technologies and useful practices from the Americas, including the adoption of cotton gins, agricultural practices, and military disciplines. He devoted much of his military pension to funding a Choctaw school system and had his 5 children educated as well as possible. Pushmataha negotiated 2 more land cession treaties with the United States while the Treaty of October 24, 1816 was counted of little loss, composed mainly of hunted out grounds. The Treaty of Dowak Stand, signed October 18, 1820, was highly contentious. European American settlement was encroaching on core lands of Choctaw, although the government offered equivalent-sized plots of land in the future states of Arkansas and Oklahoma. Pushmataha knew the lands were less fertile and the European American squatters were already settling in the territory. He displayed much diplomacy and showed a business capacity equal to that of General Jackson, against whom he was pitted in driving a sharp bargain. Reportedly, in a tense exchange with Andrew Jackson, they exchanged frank views. So I guess this is their back and forth. So General Jackson's put on all his dignity and thus addressed the chief. I wish you to understand that I am Andrew Jackson, and by the eternal you shall sign that treaty as I have prepared it. The mighty Choctaw chief was not disconcerted by his haughty address, and springing suddenly to his feet and imitating the manner of his opponent, replied, I know very well who you are, but I wish you to understand that I am Pushmataha, head chief of the Choctaws, and by the eternal, I will not sign the treaty.
Lucky we can't translate that.
Basically, he said, I don't give a flam who you are. You're going to respect me like I respect you, or don't nothing get signed. How about that?
Basically, you better slow down.
Pushmataha signed only after securing guarantees in the text of the treaty that the U.S. would evict squatters from reserved lands. So now we're going to talk about his journey to Washington, which was reportedly where he died. So in 1824, Pushmataha was upset about encroaching settlement patterns and the unwillingness of local authorities to respect Indian land title. He took this case directly to the federal government in Washington, D.C., leading a delegation of two other regional chiefs, Pukshubi and Mashulatubi. He sought either expulsion of white settlers from deeded lands in Arkansas or compensation in land and cash for such lands. The group, including talking warrior Red Fort Nicokachich, Colonel Robert Cole, and David Folsom, both mixed-race Choctaw. Y'all catch that?
Yep.
The group included talking warrior, Red Fort, Nita Kachi, Colonel Robert Cole, and David Folsom, both mixed-race Choctaw. Captain Daniel McCurtain and Major John Pitchland, who was married to a Choctaw. Are y'all seeing how this all operates?
Like we've been saying it, marrying in.
So Major John Pitchland was married to a Choctaw and the official U.S. interpreter. So all these individuals were in discussions with what was to become a transfer of land ownership, because the Choctaw were being moved out of what is known as Mississippi and moved into Arkansas. And they had to have the squatters removed and wanted to make sure that the local authorities respected their titles, their land titles. But they sent what it appears to be, and I could be wrong, and again, take this with a grain of salt, considering this is Wikipedia. They basically sent mixed race chiefs and an interpreter and a major who was also married to a Choctaw to negotiate on behalf, I guess for leverage sake. The delegation planned to travel to Natchez Trace, to Nashville, then to Lexington and Maysville, Kentucky, across the river called the Sprague-Withipi by the Shawnee. To Chillicothe, Ohio, former principal town of the Shawnee, and east along the National Highway to Washington City. Pushmataha met with President James Monroe and gave a speech to Secretary of War John C. Calhoun. He reminded Calhoun of the long-standing alliances between the United States and the Choctaw. He said, I can say and tell the truth that no Choctaw ever drew his bow against the United States. My nation has given of their country until it was very small. We are in trouble. While in Washington, Pushmataha sat in his army uniform for a portrait by Charles Byrd King. It hung in the Smithsonian Institute until 1865. While the original was destroyed by a fire that year, numerous prints have been made. It had become the most famous likeness of Pushmataha. Chief Pushmataha also met with the Marquis de L'Enfant, who was visiting Washington, D.C. for the last time. Pushmataha hailed L'Enfant as a fellow-aged warrior who, though foreign, rose to high renown in the American cause. So I'm going to stop right there. So this is another case of another chief who had long-standing relationships with the Europeans. In this case, Pushmataha was a big supporter of the 13 colonies in the United States, and stated that the Choctaw had never drawn a boat against the United States, and they had given so much. Now that they have no land, and now they're in trouble. So I'm gonna let that sink in. So he's basically pleading after he's been cordial, inviting, accommodating, as they accommodated his land, or basically as he signed it away. So now he's being forced to move from Missouri to Arkansas. Grand Rising Free. So we're talking about Pushmataha, who is the father of Greenwood LaFleur. So while in Washington, Pushmataha sat in his. Okay, I already read that. So let's talk about the death and the burial of Pushmataha. In December 1824, Pushmataha acquired a viral respiratory infection, then called the croup. He quickly became seriously ill and was visited by Andrew Jackson. On his deathbed, Pushmataha reflected that the national capital was a good place to die. Pushmataha's chosen assistant also happened to suddenly die on the return journey from Washington, D.C. to Choctaw Lands in present-day Mississippi. Huh? It said, I'm sorry. Pushmataha's chosen assistant also happened to suddenly die on the return journey from Washington, D.C. to Choctaw Lands in present-day Mississippi.
Hey, I'm not coming to DC this summer, y'all.
I'm gonna stay away now. I've been going like 4 or 5 times already. I'm not going back.
Well, obviously you're fine because you keep up. You're able to make
Well,
it
don't
back.
go sick, I guess, is what it is. If you're sick, don't go to DC.
No, don't
You
go
might-
see
you
nobody
might-
with political influence.
See,
You might don't make it.
see, Bones. That's why you didn't come in right. So try it again. Check your mic. So
Yeah, visiting people with political influence get you sick. I see when you go to DC. I'm straight. I don't want to see nobody.
So it says Pushmataha's request full military honors for his funeral and gave specific instructions as to his effects. His last recorded words were these: "I'm about to die, but you will return to our country. As you go along the paths, you will see the flowers and hear the birds sing. But Pushmataha will see and hear them no more. When you reach home, they will ask you, 'Where's Pushmataha?' And you will say to them, 'He is no more.' They will hear your words as they did the fall of the great oak in the stillness of the midnight woods." Pushmataha died on December 24th, 1824. As requested, he was buried with full military honors as a brigadier general of the United States Army in the Congressional Cemetery in Washington. He is one of the 2 Native American chiefs interred there, the other being Peter Pitchland, also a Choctaw. His epitaph, inscribed in uppercase letters, reads, "Pushmataha, Choctaw chief, lies there. This monument to his memory is erected by his brother chiefs who were associated with him in delegation from their nation in the year 1824 to the general government to the United States." Pushmataha was a warrior of great distinction. He was wise in counsel, eloquent in the extraordinary degree, and of all occasions, under all circumstances, the white man's friend. He died in Washington on the 24th of December, 1824, of the croup, in the 60th year of his age. Among his last words were the following: "When I am gone, let the big guns be fired over me." The National Intelligence reported on December 28th, 1824, of his death. Attention's Hotel on Friday last, the 24th instance, Pushmataha, a chief of the Choctaw Nation of Indians, distinguished for his bold elocution of his attachment to the United States. At the commencement of the late war on southern border, he took an early and undecided stand in favor of the weak and isolated settlements on Tombigbee, and he continued to fight with and for them whilst they had an enemy in the field. His bones will rest a distance from his home, but in a bosom of the people he delighted to love. May a good hunting ground await his generous spirit in another and better world. Military honors were paid to his remains by the Marine Corps of the United States and by several uniformed companies of the militia.
Here we go again.
So here's a side note. Well, not a side note, but something to think about. And this comes from the Hampshire Gazette in Maine, June 5th, 1825, reported. At Washington City, Pushmataha, principal chief of district of the Choctaw Nation of Indians. This chief was remarkable for his personal courage and skill in war, having been engaged in 24 battles, several of which were fought under the command of General Jackson. 24 battles. That's a lot of battles be fighting in and to live.
Yeah, exactly. And to live.
But he died at the age of 60. That's relatively young for an Indian.
Yeah. Well, mysteriously walk in there, you and your assistant wind up dead.
How old was the assistant? Did he have crew?
It doesn't stipulate.
Suddenly. He just died suddenly.
Wake up suddenly.
So let's look at the successors of Pushmataha. There is a 6-month period in which no documentation of the chief of the 6 towns is recorded. However, Tapanahoma, nephew of Chief Pushmataha, is shown to have succeeded Pushmataha. Correspondence dated June 1825 lists Tapanahoma in this position. Several Choctaw histories have confused Tapanahoma with General Hummingbird, who died at the age of 77 on December 23, 1827. A letter dated September 28, 1828, from Tapanahoma mentions his uncle Pushmataha. The Choctaw Nation at this time was on the point of civil war. The faction supported by David Folsom elected John Garland to replace Tapanahoma by October 11, 1828. Nikakichi, Day Prolonger, succeeded Hummingbird and was the chief for the district during the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek. There's a lot to digest in this. So, where do you want to go with this, Bones? No sellout. We know that he was one of the reasons why Tekamesh couldn't get an army up to support or to fight the United States because of Pushmataha's long-standing relationship with the United States. So he basically blocked Tekamesh. Remember, Tekamesh was pro being on code. He was pro basically having the Europeans either stop encroaching on the land or go home. He wanted nothing. Tekamesh wanted nothing to do with the Europeans. Period, point blank in the discussion. Separate but equal. That's what he was promoting. I mean, what we're seeing is another instance of Indian chiefs who are having long-standing relationships with Europeans, and no matter how much they gave, they still end up getting screwed. And here's the thing that I find interesting is that the other chiefs were seeing this and was trying to talk to him, but it's like you couldn't talk them out of it. And if I'm missing it, let me know. Like I said, we need to talk to Doodle Vision because Choctaw is his tribe. He could definitely clarify a lot of this information. Either confirm it
Yeah,
or debunk
like,
it.
yeah.
Say again, Bones?
It can shed some light.
Yeah. All right, so that was Greenwood LaFleur's father. So Push Mahata is a grandfather of Greenwood LaFleur. Um, so let's go over to Mushu Latubi, which is a link that we dropped in last night. Oh, not last night, but yesterday for people in the chat to take a look at. At the end of the day, we want to give you something to look at and possibly contribute and bring to the conversation. For those of you that are unaware, there is a call-in number. I mean, no one has used it yet, so for posterity's sake, you could be the first caller on the Calling Aboriginals Bloodlines Grand Rising show. Just something to think about.
If you got your questions that you can't type or something, or you got some information to share, if these one of your tribes that we're speaking on, yeah, feel free to add into it.
As long as you're respectful, you won't get booted.
Bingo.
Man, it is what it is. So, what we're going to talk about now is Mushila Tubi. Arthur Gray says, "Hey guys, tried to get on your website but didn't come up." So, Bones, you want to talk about that right quick before we move
the
forward?
website is updating because we're moving it from our permanent hosting site. So, it'll pop back up. I'll get the notification. Hopefully, to be doing the show, and I'll let everybody know. But all it is just upgrading and being migrated to a permanent hosting. That's it.
So, is there anything more you want to share about that as a reason why, or no?
No, it was nothing like that. Instead of having two different accounts, just consolidated everything on one account.
Okay.
That's it. Made it more efficient that way.
Okay. So thanks for bringing it to our attention, Arthur. I meant to bring it up before we actually got started, but got sidetracked. So thanks, Arthur, for bringing it to our attention and also coming on and blessed us with your presence. So peace. And so right now where we're at is Mushila Tubi, and we put it in the chat. I'll go ahead and repost it. Those that have just gotten here. And Mushila Tubi is actually one of the Choctaw chiefs, and we're still on the Revolutionary War. And the Choctaw sided with the United States against Great Britain. So we're just going over the last tribe sided with the United States.
So, yeah, we didn't even touch the British side yet.
I know, right? So Mushila Tubi, who's a Choctaw, and his name is Amushili Tabi. Amushila Tabi is how the Choctaw pronounce it. Like I said, I'm about to get Doodle Vision to correct me because I know I'm not saying it right, so forgive me.
Hey, me, I'm not even going to attempt to mess his name up.
So the name means determined to kill. That is a serious name.
What? I'm like, man, I can't hang with you.
And I don't want to meet him. You want to meet me? What you want to meet me for?
I'm good.
Like, what you mean? Why I'm hiding behind this tree? Hold up. That sound like Omar coming from the wire. Omar coming?
Yep.
Everybody's scared.
Now they have look. Now they have him born anywhere between 1750 to 1770, and they said he died in 1838. And so he was the chief of the Choctaw Okla Tanap. Now, if you remember what we were informed from Doodle Vision, who is a Choctaw, Okla is the first part of Oklahoma, and then you have the Houma tribe. So that's where that term Oklahoma comes from. It's from two tribes that they combine. So this chief is from Choctaw Okla, Tanap, which means lower towns, one of the three major Choctaw divisions during the early 19th century. When the principal chief Greenwood LaFleur stayed in Mississippi at the time of removal, Mushalatubi was elected as principal chief, leading the tribe to Indian Territory. So here we go. He was a chief that led the other chiefs, led the other tribes, led the Choctaw tribe to the Indian Territory that was then, what was it, Oklahoma, Bones, if I'm not mistaken? Yeah, he led them to
Yeah,
Oklahoma. Okay, so remember, Greenwood LaFleur was bold enough to stay there with the Indians that he sold out, but he ended up getting into politics, so he was under military protection, so they couldn't touch him, even though they wanted to kill him. So Mushalatubi was the actual chief that went out there to Oklahoma with the Choctaw, which are part of the 5 civilized tribes. Okay, it's something to take note of and remember. In 1812, he had led his warriors to assist General Andrew Jackson in the war against the Creek Red Sticks, known as the Creek Wars. Now, many of you who have been in contact and talked to Doodoo Vision have heard him mention numerous times about the Red Sticks Wars. So I guess we'll go over that shortly, and have him, when he has times, give an Indian version of it. In December 1824,
Yes,
go ahead, Bones.
no, I was just saying, yeah, that'd be a good look for him to speak on it since he.
Okay, so in December 1824, Mushalatubi was one of the three principal chiefs leading a Choctaw delegation to Washington to seek help against encroaching European American settlers. Pushmahata and Pukshanubi were the other chiefs. Pukshanubi, aged 80, died before they reached Washington. And Pushmataha died of illness in the capital soon after the meeting. I'm sorry. After their meeting with the government. Come on. Y'all just making Bones sound right. So Pukshanubi died before they reached Washington. Pushmataha died of illness, capital soon after their meeting with the
I'm
government.
not taking no A2 invitation that's sent to come to Washington. Let that be known now.
Wow.
Nobody.
So
Yeah,
on
you sound like an NCAA athlete.
So on 26 September 1830, together with Principal Chief Greenwood LaFleur and others, Mushalatubi signed the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek, which ceded the U.S. government most of the remaining Choctaw territory in Mississippi and Alabama in exchange for territory in Indian Territory, which was Oklahoma. Other spellings for this name include Masholetevbi, a Moshu Lee Tevbi, and Musho Latubi, Mushale Tubi. Broken up, you got Mushale space, then Tubi or Tobe, Tubbee, and then Mushala Tubi, Mushala Tuba.
Michele.
Not Mishale, Mushala Tubi, Tuba. Okay, so Mushalatubi. So we know that he was a tribal chief that was responsible for leading his Choctaw tribe to Oklahoma. Now remember, at this particular time, you have two Choctaw tribes: the tribe that stayed behind and the tribe that went to Oklahoma. So let's talk about the Creek Wars. And we're still on Mushalatubi. The great Shawnee leader Tekamesh visited Mushalatubi in 1811. When he came south to get support for his great confederacy in an effort to push out the European Americans, today is known as Tekamesh Confederacy. Tekamesh met with Mushalatubi at his village, Mushalaville, located in present-day Noxubee County, Mississippi. He was chief of Oklatanap, Lower Towns, the southern division of the three major geographic and clan Choctaw areas of settlement. Other major divisions were in the northeast, including part of Alabama, and the west near Vicksburg. Mushlatubi and had sympathy for Tecumseh and his cause, but decided he was too old to do anything for the Confederacy, so remained neutral. And what we say about that neutral stuff. In addition to fighting with Jackson and his forces against the Creek, Mushlatubi led 52 Choctaw warriors in the Battle of New Orleans in 1814. They fought in the swamps and Cypress Creeks, picking up many British pickets and demoralizing them. They kept shooting down the Redcoats as they were fighting for their homeland. When the Battle of New Orleans was over, Mushlatubi and his 52 warriors returned home. They left the service on January 27, 1815 from Fort Stewart. So did anybody catch that? It says that he led 52 Choctaw warriors in the Battle of New Orleans in 1814. They fought in the swamps and cypress trees, picking off many British pickets and demoralizing them. They kept shooting down the Redcoats as they were fighting for their homeland. When the Battle of New Orleans was over, Mushlatubi and his 52 warriors returned home. So that means there were no deaths on their side. And the reason why I think that's important, and I want people to understand, is that had these Indians got together and fought as a unit, the Europeans would not have stood a chance.
Instead of breaking up, trying to make individual deals.
That's my whole point. Because they were not, when they had their battles, they weren't decimated. It took the Europeans a while to beat them. So it wasn't like they had one battle and they just wiped them out. So let's not succumb to this oppressive mentality that we were just getting mollywopped. You know. But anyway, I digress. Under continuing pressure from European American settlers and the United States government, Mushlatubi signed a treaty of the Choctaw Trading House on 24 October 1816 and the treaty ground on 18 October 1820 to secede land. The U.S. failed to prevent settlers from continuing to encroach on the Choctaw territory. Do y'all hear that? The U.S. failed to prevent settlers from continuing to encroach on Choctaw territory. So even though they're doing all this fighting on behalf of the United States is like, we're just going to continue to let them encroach on your land. Oh yeah, indigenous intelligence says, remind me of the Kuwaiti Resolution of 1718 when they remained neutral. Yeah, you had some Indians that remained neutral because they thought it was going to be safer. Now realizing when you don't pick a side is already picked for you. So do we really want to talk about Mushlatubi's trip to Washington?
I know I'm not going. Y'all tell me how that trip went.
So this is going to be an exercise in syllabic manipulation. I know I'm saying it wrong, but y'all will get over it. So in 1824, Pushmataha, Mushlatubi, and Pukshanubi, the three chiefs of Choctaw regional divisions, became concerned about the encroaching settlement of European Americans and the unwillingness of local authorities to respect Indian land titles. They still hoped to offset the government's push to removal west of the Mississippi River and resolved to take their case to the federal government in Washington, D.C. Pushmataha led the delegation. They sought either expulsion of the white settlers from deeded lands in Arkansas or compensation in the land and cash for such lands. And we already read this, but it bears to be repeated for those who you are just coming in. It states the group consisted of Talking Warrior, Red Fort, Nika Kachi, Colonel Robert Cole, and David Folsom, both mixed race Choctaw. So Colonel Robert Cole and David Folsom were mixed race Choctaw, in addition to the other Choctaw Indians. Captain Daniel Buckerton and Major John Pitchlin, the U.S. interpreter. Now, if you recall, when we was talking about Pushmataha, John Pitchlin was also married to a Choctaw. So keep that in mind. They planned to travel to Natchez Trace to Nashville, then to Lexington, Kentucky, onward to Maysville, Kentucky, across the Ohio River, called Spale with Phoebe by the Shawnee, Northland to Chillicothe, Ohio, former principal town of Shawnee. Then finally east over National Highway to the Washington City. While in Washington, the chief also met with Marquis de Lafont, who was visiting Washington, D.C. for the last time. He hailed him as a fellow-aged warrior who, though foreign, rose to high renown in American causes. And Wishler Tooby said this to George Washington, I guess. It says, you are one of our fathers that fought in the war with General George Washington. We take you here by the hand as a friend and a father. We have always walked in the white paths of peace, and in those paths we have traveled to visit you. We offer you pure hands, which have never been stained with the blood of Americans. We live in the South, where the sun shines hot upon us. We have been neighbors to the French, neighbors to the Spaniards, and neighbors to the English. But now our only neighbors are the Americans, in the midst of whom we live as friends and brothers.
I'm glad you mentioned that because people keep forgetting the 150 to 200 years that the French and the Spanish was around these tribes already, so you can have an understanding why they were already working with Europeans, because they've been living around them already for like 100, 200 some plus years already.
Okay, so Antonio asks, sorry for just reading your comments, Antonio. He says, Antonio asks, what was the situation like before the Europeans started to show up? Because if it was preposterous, I doubt any of this would have happened. And if it wasn't, not preposterous, prosperous. See, that's what happens when you read a lot of syllabic words. If it was prosperous, I doubt any of this would have happened. And if it wasn't prosperous, why not? And then he says the mistakes didn't start with the deals that were being made. The mistakes and the flaws had to have been present before colonization. So go ahead, Bones.
One of the big mistakes that when you read about the Indians that were dealing with the Spanish and French, they wanted to be like them so much that they started taking on that their lifestyle. So by the time the British, these tribes start working with the British, as you can see, a lot of these chiefs are Europeanized already. They into that lifestyle, they into that culture. Or they was just mentioning, that was the Choctaw just mentioning how they lived around the French and the Spanish. Now they living around.
Wasn't Joseph Brant? He had his whole landscape to be mixed, the melting pot.
Yeah,
the neighborhood that he built.
That was another one. They grew up idolizing the Europeans, dressing like them, living like them, eating like them, taking on their lifestyle. It's like with anything, you see it now. You grew up in a particular neighborhood. Somebody sees somebody and they emulate it. Even though that's not them, they emulate it because that's what they into. I think the first mistake is turning your back on your ancestors' ways. Grass ain't always green on the other side.
And another thing to take into consideration, Antonio, is that we were prosperous before they got here, but only some of us were prosperous. It's not this great utopia that many of us, even I, believed this at one particular time until I was educated. It wasn't this great utopia where all Indians were equal. You had some tribes that were warriors. You had some tribes that were healers. You had some tribes that were navigators and sailors. So they all had their expertise. And then you had other tribes that just got in where they fit in, who were basically had to take what was left. And if you really pay attention and look at these treaties and realize that there were some smaller tribes who actually were the first ones to deal with the Europeans because they could get power. And you had mentioned, you says, were we trying to manipulate the Europeans to help us overthrow other tribes, while at the same time the Europeans were trying to manipulate us for their benefits? And the answer to that is yes and no. I say yes and no for the simple fact of the matter is that some of the tribes they were doing it for control of fur trade. Some of the tribes they were doing it for to get control of the land because they had never had that much land. You know, if you look at some of the tribes like the Catawba Sapani or the Catawba as a whole, their land reached a large part of not only South Carolina and North Carolina, but also a large part of Virginia. Then you had tribes like the Powhatan, who were also part of that Virginia landmass, but they didn't have as much land as Choctaw. I mean, as much as the Catawba. And then you had some tribes sprinkled in there. So who's to say that when the French and the Spanish came in, they didn't? Of course, they studied us, and they could have easily looked at who the ones that were easiest to control and manipulate to start gaining the following.
Find the ones that was outside, the ones that's being treated a particular way, the ones that's looking like outcasts because they have mixed parents and they idolizing one half of their parents.
And Antonio, I'm not talking about they were fascinated by fabric and metals because I know that the Catawba were the basically control of the waterways. When we went and made deals, and when we went to do trade with the Vikings and the Greeks, and mixed with the Greeks and created the Arcadians, they didn't have anything to trade with us but their daughters, because we had all the metals, we had the jade, we had the jewelry. So we wasn't so much surprised or enticed by the trinkets or the fabric. We were enticed by the things that we didn't have here on our continent, which were European women. It was an oddity, something different. So we end up bringing those women back. Now I can only speak for the Catawba that were on the waterways. I can't speak for other tribes because I don't, that's not my tribe. I can only tell you from where we stood. So I can tell you that the Catawba were not impressed by fabrics and jewels because we had all that stuff over here already. And it's not even a situation of we admired their confidence and their swagger. We probably respected some of their ways as far as the way that they fought or the way that they battled. Potentially, I don't know. I'm speculating now. But at the end of the day, they were different, and sometimes different creates curiosity.
And also, don't forget, a lot of these chiefs, they got this admiration for them. Fathers are either Spanish, French, or British.
And let's not mistake. Let's not discount good old fashioned greed. And I think we mentioned this last week. What's better than being a chief? Being a chief and a king.
Yep.
Why? Or as Push Mataha was, he was considered a paramount chief, which basically means he was chief of chiefs. And that was a title given to him by the British.
Yeah, over all chiefs, but under the King and Queen of England.
So he basically had two titles. Not only was he a chief of a division of the Choctaw, he was considered paramount chief by Europeans who respected him. So he was considered chief of chiefs, which basically means he had dual roles and dual titles. You got to remember, he was also into the garb and having the titles of brigadier general and all that good stuff. I mean, so something different. At the end of the day, it was just different.
Made you stood out from everybody else, especially if you're coming from a culture to where everybody got set positions, set jobs, set responsibilities, and no particular person can rise to a particular level. Now you bring in something that's different. It gives people who normally wouldn't have a chance to rise to power. Because I don't think if the ancestors wasn't dealing with these Europeans like that, you wouldn't have mixed breed chiefs. Because what did we read yesterday? Why did they encourage having mixed breed chiefs? For better negotiations.
Yep.
See, so we got to do away with that thing that people came in and started planning us. No, our own people voted the mixed ones in to make decisions like that, so that way they can get better leverage with the Europeans, French, or Spanish.
Because at the end of the day, they decided to choose a side to fight with. So you had some Indians that chose to fight with the Europeans. You had some Indian tribes that chose to stay neutral, and you
Yep.
had some Indian tribes that chose to fight against all tribes. I mean, all Europeans.
Yep. Yeah, what was the one they called a prophet? He didn't want none of them over here. He like send them all back.
Yeah, the prophet from the Lenape. Yeah, he was part of his mentality was what was it, the Potomac Rebellion. He was part of what they call the Pan-Indian movement. Greetings, IC Network.
Which is the belief that all Indians at that time should unite under one front to fight the colonizer off our land. That was Pan-Indianism. Or Pan-Indian.
Indigenous intelligence says, yep, they sent their Indian agents in there and messed up our markets. The deerskin trade put the Yamase's Muskogee in debt. Yeah, basically. I can see how that's possible, indigenous intelligence. But many of those agents were mixed with, they were part Indian.
Yep, and picked by Indians. The Europeans didn't put them in power. The Indians put them in power.
You got to realize, in order to be able to negotiate and talk to the Europeans, you had to teach the Europeans your language, and the Europeans had to teach you their language. So that means there was at least a couple of years of, learning and teaching. And then once the language was able to be translated and transferred, then you were able to make deals. Because you can't make deals if you can't communicate.
Yep, communication is the first part of any deal. We can't speak the same language. We can't sign anything. How? I don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what I'm talking about.
So the reason why I say that indigenous intelligence, not to come off as if I'm attacking, but our whole mentality is yes, the Europeans came over here. Yes, they're sneaky. Yes, they broke treaties. But in order for them to break the treaties, somebody had to allow them in to our family or our being relatives and get those treaties signed. As we're reading, the Choctaw at this particular time had never raised a bow against Americans. And
what he said, they lived peacefully among them forever, he said. Still don't know how long forever is at this time.
He said we always had a peaceful relationship with the Europeans and the European Americans, which is crazy because according to history, they didn't start coming over here. When we say European Americans, we basically talking about the English, who then after the 1744 when they took over Ireland, or was it Ireland, Scottish, became Great Britain. So in the early 1700s, 1704, that's when they started communicating. They, meaning the Choctaw, started communicating with the English. But for at least 150 years before that, the Algonquins were dealing with the French.
Yep.
And by that time, you figure about the 1700s, late 1700s, the Algonquin tribes, namely the Mohawk, had already had mulatto chiefs. And when we say mulatto chiefs, we're talking about chiefs who had mothers who were actually the princes of the Choctaw, who were responsible for choosing or voting in the chiefs. So these Europeans were strategically marrying women in the tribes that had power and influence.
And then in return, these women put their children, vote their children in this power to be chiefs and stuff. I mean, if you got to be voted in by the tribe, who put the chief there again?
The tribe.
And at any given time, the political structure of the tribe can remove this chief, right?
That's correct.
We even have stories of some chiefs being removed and killed for making deals that the tribes didn't like, right?
Yep.
Oh, yes, we do.
So what this is telling me, if they never asked Joseph Brant to step down, this chief to step down, that means the majority of the tribe went along with this. Well, at least the parts of the tribe that had influence and made decisions and made the votes. They had enough numbers so the chief couldn't be outvoted.
Yep.
That's what it would tell me.
Yeah, and remember when Joseph Brant, when some of the Five Nation chiefs wanted Joseph Brant removed, the Women Council was like, nope, we're not removing him. So it didn't matter what another chief said. If the council kept you in, they kept you in. So there was nothing that another chief could do unless you had made some form of violation, and they took your head by tomahawk.
So let's look at it like this then. We can basically not taking no responsibility from no chief, but we know the chief is just a figurehead, and the real decisions come from the council. So could these decisions that these chiefs were signing on were decisions that were voted on by the council? Because the chief don't have no power. He speaks for the council.
Sounds like good math to me.
Now, the reason why I say that, because it would make these contracts and these treaties a lot more technical than we try to think, that one person went off and signed off. Mm-hmm. It would have to be somebody
validating. Exactly, facts. It does come off like that too. You see the names on it.
Think about it. If you was the chief and you went by yourself and you went to DC and you sold our land, and you think you're gonna come back here? Man, how could that dude live around the Choctaw with selling land? Could it be some went and some of the power struggle and some of the power structure stayed, and him and the remaining ones got property and land? Because I mean, you would need to pull these type of moves off. One person can't do this. You would need multiple people in high-ranking places on the Indian side to pull this off. Because why wouldn't they get mad and just tomahawk you?
And remember the Cherokees deal. If anyone sells any land to any European without our consent, we're killing you.
Mm-hmm. So we know they was doing all this, and none of the council or the tribes was up in uproar about this land being sold from other Indians. I mean, who was giving the chiefs permission to sell under other Indian lands? Was it his council?
Exactly. You have to have counsel. And Free says, yes, there has to be a meeting of the minds in order for a contract to be legally valid. That's true. And Indigenous Intelligence says, the Uchis, Cherokees, and Creeks did too. That's how their Indian agents got clout when they grew up. Exactly, because it was all about politics. They got involved in politics. Having relationships with these Europeans or the French and the Spanish. This time, we might as well say
higher than the king. I mean, what's really higher than the chief? If the chief is the highest you can go as an Indian, there's titles outside of always that's higher than chief. Mayors, senators, don't they have more influence? And don't it seem like a lot of these dudes that were chiefs, once they sold land, it's funny how they became mayors and governors and senators so quick. Could it be they traded a minor title for a major title?
That's what it sounded like.
Title on the promise. That's what it sounded like to me. Hey y'all, we finna split up the tribe. Half y'all go out there, half of the power struggle go out there, and y'all take a bunch of people out there with you, and half of this power struggle will stay here. And could it be, because think about it, he stayed in Mississippi, and he was the one that signed the deal that all Indians left in Mississippi, unless somebody going to he the one who signed the deal that everybody who was left in Mississippi became a U.S. citizen, but he also stayed. Could it be by him staying and making them citizens that he was going to get dominion over them? I'm just throwing stuff out there.
Yeah, because he also had slaves. That's a whole other story. Could those slaves have been some of those Indians that stayed behind who was actually citizens?
I'm thinking they all was. Cause ain't Mississippi like one of the worst places for slavery? Wasn't Mississippi the last place? Didn't they let their last slaves go 2014? I'm just saying. Yes, 2014. I stated the date right.
Man, it's just this is David Carey said, still today, governors get to be presidents. Facts, David Corey.
Yeah, because wouldn't you think about it? If there's a new political structure that's coming in, right? Wouldn't you jump over? Because the side that you were maxed out already. You know what I'm saying? Your pension plan and everything was punched in before you started. But now here comes this new system where you can get new titles and new benefits. It's
Exactly.
promising you now, you don't have to have a council. You don't have to listen to your tribe. No, you can come in on this government and you make decisions for this area. It's
Yep.
kind of funny. Don't all states got sovereignty?
Yep, they do.
Local municipalities got sovereignty?
Yep. And then for those of you that don't think that's true, why is it that you can sell weed in some states and not sell weed in other states?
Because they're sovereign. They have their own laws, own police force, own national guards. Think about it.
Yeah, David Corey said 2014 was the year that they changed the slave law. Can somebody put that that in the back chat? I mean, put that in the chat. The link to that, because that's interesting. I was not aware of that.
Yeah, I don't. A lot of people probably don't remember. 2014 is when Mississippi let go its last set of slaves. One of the dudes died, and he had the family living out there for years. They did a big news story on these people. They ain't know nothing about life as we know it. Them people were still out there on that farm working. If the man never died, they still. I think they were like 4 or 5 generations out there, a family just working.
Wow.
Didn't even know everything changed. Yeah, it's Mississippi 2014. That's when you had your buddy Al and them running down there like they were gonna do something for them people. Them people know who they are. Trying to tell them people they were African slaves. Some people know they were Indians. They went in Indians, they came out Indians.
So again, what it boils down to is, in order for us to correct our state, we must clean our own house. We must accept responsibility for what our tribes did and not continue to blame 100% the European and make it appear as though we are totally 100% innocent, because we're not. If your tribe is 5% guilty for one transgression against that tribe, that still makes them guilty. David Corey said, hell, white women didn't get free until 1960s. Peace, Golden Move. That was funny.
Yep. And everybody keep forgetting that. The Negro had rights way back in the 1800s. Who didn't get him to the 19s?
The Women's Suffrage Act, the first set of laws that started to give them some freedom was the Women's Suffrage Act of 1920, and shortly thereafter you had all these women leading these political fights to stop the sale of alcohol. Antonio says, nah, bro, y'all trying to make me snap today. Nah, Antonio, ain't nobody trying to make you snap, and I know you probably saying that in jest, but at the end of the day, we gotta clean out our own house, man. We gotta accept our bad relatives. Peace, Carrie Bay. We gotta. Can't nobody tell me. I mean, you can tell me, but that don't mean it's true. You can't tell me you ain't got no knuckleheads for family members. You know, you can't tell me that you got family members that you don't really want to be bothered with, or you find out they coming to the cookout, or they coming to the family event. You like, man, I do not want to be bothered. So if that's the case now, don't you think that was the case then? So if we're not going to address and change our behavior, and if we're not going to call things for what they are and correct what we're doing that's wrong to one another, how in the world are we going to unite and go to the United States government and tell them they're wrong? Again, you can't, well, it's ill advised to point out somebody's dirty forehead when your whole body is covered in filth. That makes you a hypocrite. And for many of us, and for far too long, we have been playing the victim card as if we were not part of the problem. I didn't say we are totally to blame. I'm saying we are part of the problem. And just because we choose, well, let me rephrase that. Just because some of us refuse to acknowledge that we're part of the problem does not keep the problem from existing. You know, it's like that proverbial elephant in the room. Nobody wants to address it because they're scared of the responsibility, which gives you the ability to respond. So we got to get this right, because if not, we're going to be passing this curse, if you will, onto our family, onto our children, and our children's children. And if you're not man enough or woman enough to accept responsibility, and you're so sorry and lazy that you want to pass it on to your children, please stay as far away from me as possible. That's your business. But stay as far away from me as possible, because you're not going to like anything I have to say to you. But getting back to Greenwood LaFleur, hold on, because we was on Mushu Latubi. That's what we were talking about for those of you just getting in here. Mushu Latubi was one of the three Choctaw chiefs who was responsible for signing the Treaty of was it Rabbit Creek? Dancing Rabbit Creek, which signed over the remaining part of Mississippi and almost half of Alabama to the United States while they were moved out to Oklahoma in 1830. What else happened in 1830? Y'all remember? Damming up of rivers, building of universities.
Yep. Like I said, it takes 6 months to go to the West Coast, 6 months to come back. By the time you come back, there's a whole university built up where you used to live.
David Corey, exactly, David Corey. Land grab and giveaway. It was happening simultaneously. So there was something I wanted to see, I wanted to delve into. Because there are a lot of treaties that were signed that I knew nothing about. And granted, I've only been on this lifestyle for less than a year. So I'm sure there are a lot of things I didn't read. I know what I want to read. In 1812, Musha Latubi led his warriors to assist General Andrew Jackson in the war against the Creek Red Sticks, known as the Creek Wars. Did we cover the Creek Wars?
No, we didn't get to the Red Stick Wars yet.
All right, so
That's all after the American Revolution.
So let's just talk about that a little bit. Yeah, because this is 1813, between 1813 and 1814. Now, for those of you who knows Doodle Vision, you know he's a Choctaw, and he often mentions the Red Stick Wars. It says, not to be confused with the War Creek. I don't know what that means, but the Creek War, 1813 through 1814, also known as the Red Stick War and the Creek Civil War. was a regional war between opposing Creek factions. European empires in the United States taking place largely in today's Alabama and along the Gulf Coast. The major conflicts of the war took place between state militia units and the Red Stick Creeks. The Creek War was part of the centuries-long American Indian Wars. The century-long American Indian Wars. It is usually considered part of the War of 1812 because it was influenced by the Tiguex War in the Old Northeast. And it was concurrent with the American-British War and involved many of the same participants. And the Red Sticks had sought British support and aided Admiral Cochrane's advance towards New Orleans. The Creek War began as a conflict within the Creek Confederation. So that means there was a split in the Confederation. But local white militia units quickly became involved. British traders in Florida, as well as the Spanish government, provided the Red Sticks with arms and supplies because of their shared interest in preventing the expansion of the United States into their areas. So these Red Stick Indians are now able to have guns and arms. The United States government formed an alliance with the Choctaw Nation and the Cherokee Nation, the traditional enemies of the Creeks. So this goes back to one of the things that Antonio had asked about the prosperity. Again, there were some Indians that were prosperous, and you also got to realize because we are a people of competition, there's going to be competition. So the natural enemy of the Choctaw and the Cherokee were the Creeks. So they were warned before the Europeans got here. Well, they had beefs and skirmishes. Remember, there was also something known as a blood for blood law. And for those of you who were not on who didn't see the show yesterday, a brief synopsis of it is basically a blood for blood law. Basically stands for is if I kill one of your family members, then it was my tribe's responsibility to either take me out or kill somebody on behalf of your family to basically even the playing field. And it kept a lot of tribes at peace because no one wanted to take a life. And indigenous intelligence says that Yamasee and the Oconee did not mess with the Cherokee. So yeah, there were fractions of tribes that had dislike for each other. And that's natural. You don't like everybody, so please stop thinking that everything was a utopia before the Europeans got here, because that's not true. But getting back to the blood for blood law, that blood for blood law was removed, if you remember, by what was it, Greenleaf LaFleur. He was instrumental in removing that, and that was in the late 1700s. So by this time, there is no checks and balances for killing tribal members.
Nope. When before that, you couldn't do it because your tribe would execute you.
So it took an Indian chief to remove that blood for blood law. It wasn't the United States that could do it because they had been knowing about it and they had no jurisdiction over the Indians. So for those of you claiming that the oppressor came in and just took away all of our rights, that's a lie. We took away many of our own rights because we were, quote unquote, literally in bed with these Europeans, having children with these Europeans, placing these mulatto children in power as war chiefs, and as long as we stayed at war, the chiefs were the ones that could sign the treaties. It was done on purpose. Do your research. Stop acting like a baby. So now you have the Creek Wars, or as Due Division always reminds us, the Red Stick Wars. So the Creek War began as a conflict within the Creek Confederation, but local white militia units quickly became involved. British traders in Florida, as well as Spanish government, provided the Red Sticks with arms and supplies because of their shared interest in preventing the expansion of the United States into this area. The United States government formed an alliance with the Choctaw Nation and Cherokee Nation, the traditional enemies of the Creeks, along with the remaining Creeks to put down the rebellion. The war effectively ended with the Treaty of Fort Jackson, August 1814, when General Andrew Jackson forced the Creek Confederacy to surrender more than 21 million acres in what is now southern Georgia and central Alabama. 21 million acres. Now it's funny how they give the credit to General Andrew Jackson, but it was the actual Creek, it was actually Choctaw and Cherokee that defeated him. He ain't
That
doing
did
it.
work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember, I was saying that one before. There's no way I believe that on horseback he rode through all this Indian land to come to Florida and made it back in one piece. Nah, he wasn't that bad.
So he had Cherokee and Choctaw help. Let's not get this twisted.
Yeah, who people think the Tennessee Volunteers are? Oops, was I supposed to say that?
Now you weren't supposed to say that. You weren't supposed to be thinking. You're supposed to be indoctrinated with what I call conscious community think tank.
Yeah, but y'all better study these colleges and their mascots real close. Remember, Jackson went to Tennessee to get volunteers to go fight. Who were them volunteers he got?
Indians.
Anybody?
Tennessee.
So the Creek Confederacy surrendered more than 23 million acres in what is now southern Georgia and central Alabama. So the southern part of Georgia and the central part of Alabama were won because of Choctaw and Cherokee forces fighting and beating the Creek Indians. Red Stick Wars. So let's go over the background. And here are some. You're gonna start hearing some different tribes names. Some of these tribe names you've heard before, and some of them you haven't heard before. And if you're doing your genealogy, you're doing your research, you may want to pay close attention, because these are tribes that are in the lower Georgia and Alabama region. So please write these names down. The Red Stick militancy was a response to the increasing United States cultural and territorial encroachment into their traditional lands. The alternate designations as the Creek Civil War comes from the division within the tribe over cultural, political, economic, geographic matters. And at the time of the Creek War, the Upper Creeks, controlled by Coosa, Tallapoosa, and Alabama rivers that led to Mobile, while the Lower Creeks controlled the Chattahoochee River, which flowed into Apalachicola Bay. The Lower Creek were trading partners with the United States, and unlike Upper Creeks, had adopted more of their cultural practices. Does that not answer your questions?
You can see the natural split. Some people wanted to be closer to others. You can see it. But that's, oh my goodness.
So the Civil War for the Creek Indians was because the Coosa, Tallapoosa, and Alabama Indians were beefing with the Lower Creeks. And because the Lower Creek Indians were trading partners with the United States, they adopted a more cultural practices, which basically means, and I'm paraphrasing, and again, I have to talk to Choctaw to confirm this, but from what I'm understanding is they wanted to be more like Europeans and adapt some of their European ways into their culture, while the Upper Creek Indians wanted nothing to do with that. There was also a territorial conflict. Of course, there's going to be a territorial conflict because you have the Lower Creek Indians who are being influenced by the United States, trying to encroach not only on the Lower Creek's land, but they're also trying to get the Upper Creek's land as well. So there's going to be some territorial conflicts. So the province of East and West Florida were governed by the Spanish and British firms like Patton, Leslie, and Company. Pat Leslie and Company. Where have we heard that before? Pat Leslie and Company was a company that Chief LaFleur's, that Greenwood LaFleur's father worked for.
Yep. Is
And
that a coincidence that his father owned a company and he becomes a chief?
nah, that's just pure coincidence. That's
Yeah.
pure conjecture. Stop
Yeah,
being a
that just
conspiracy
happened.
theorist.
It
Stop being
just
a
happened to play out
conspiracy
that way.
theorist. We know that his mama was raped by this guy, and he became a chief because of that, because of a rape, not because of consensual relationship. Consensual relationships never happen between Europeans and Indians. Stop it. So Patton, Leslie, and Company provided most of the trade goods into Creek Country. Pensacola and Mobile in Spanish Florida controlled the outlets of the U.S. Mississippi territories established in 1798 rivers. Territorial conflicts between France, Spain, Britain, and the United States along the Gulf Coast that had previously helped the Creeks to maintain control over most of the United States Southwestern territory had shifted dramatically due to the Napoleonic Wars, the Florida Rebellion, and the War of 1812. This made the long-standing Creek trade and political alliance more tenuous than ever. During and after the American Revolution, the United States wished to maintain the Indian line, which had been established by the Royal Proclamation of 1763. The Indian line created a boundary for colonial settlement in order to prevent illegal encroachment of Indian lands and also help the U.S. government maintain control over the Indian trade. Traders and settlers often violated the terms of the treaties establishing the Indian line, and frontier settlements by colonies in Indian land was one of the arguments the United States used to expand its territory. Y'all see this? They were using the Indian line as a means to control the territory because they not only controlled the Indians, but they was controlling the trade. So they tell you that they're doing this for one reason, but at the same time, they're doing it for a totally different reason. Now you got to remember, by this time, Indians have had at least over 100 to 200 years experience with these Europeans, and they still trusting them. In the Treaty of New York, 1790, the Treaty of Coleraine, and the Treaty of Fort Wilkinson, and the Treaty of Fort Washington, the Creeks ceded their Georgia territory east of the Ocmulgee River. In 1804, the United States claimed the city of Mobile under the Mobile Act. The 1805 treaty with the Creek had also allowed the creation of the Federal Road and linked Washington to the newly acquired port city of New Orleans, which partially stretched through Creek territories. These increasing territorial grabs westward into Creek territory, which included parts of Spanish Florida, coupled with Louisiana Purchase, which neither the British nor the Spanish recognized at the time, compelled the British and Spanish governments to strengthen existing alliances. Hold on for a second. Compelled the British and Spanish governments to strengthen existing alliances with the Creek. In 1810, following the occupation at Baton Rouge during the West Florida Rebellion, the United States sent an expeditionary force to occupy Mobile. As a result, Mobile was jointly occupied by weak American and Spanish soldiers until Secretary of War John Armstrong ordered General James Wilkinson to force the Spanish to turn over control of the city in February 1813. The Patriot Army captured parts of East Florida from 1811 through 1815. After Fort Charlotte was surrendered in April, the Spanish focused on protecting Pensacola from the United States. The Spanish decided to support the Creek in the attack of the United States and in defense of their homeland, but were greatly hindered by their weak position in the Floridas and lack of supplies, even for their own army.
I got a question.
Sure.
If they fight in Florida all the way to 1850, when did they bring slaves there?
That's a good question.
Because in 1850, they still, you got Spanish, French, all these people in Florida, right?
Mm-hmm.
So ain't nobody transporting no slaves or nothing. So that story right there gets thrown completely out the window. So when did them people get there again?
That's a good question.
1850 to 1865, that's 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So in 15 years, we supposed to believe that they transported all these melanated people into South Florida.
Yeah, that does.
All these Miccosukee, all these Yamasee, all these Seminole.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right. Yeah. Well, what happened? What I missed?
I need to find that boat. I thought the Titanic was the biggest at the time.
So I'm not going to read all of the Creek Wars, because we'll cover this later. But I just wanted to give you a reference point. And how Wushla Tubi played a part in it. So let's see what else. So shall we read about the third Choctaw tribal chief?
Might as well.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Pukshanubi. Pukshanubi was
Pikachu.
not Pikachu, really, but it does sound like it could be that. So before I read it, I'm going to go back to the chat because I saw the Indigenous Intelligence put something in the chat. He says, the colonial records say the Portuguese brought them to Georgia from 1750 to 1774. Haven't seen any ships manifest to verify, though. Yeah, Indigenous Intelligence. Bones came across something, what was it, this weekend, and he's been putting it in the back chat. It's actually a ship's manifest that basically has 3 terabytes of data on it. You wanna again share that, Bones, for those that don't know?
Yes, basically shipping records from the 1500s up to the 1900s of all the foreign ships that came here, who they bought here, the names of the people, and the status of who they bought here.
They also have the names of the ships.
And the names of the ships. And what you come to learn after reading this stuff, there's no boats coming from some called continent Africa to here. But there's records of them bringing women and children, 8.8 million. There's records of them sending people at different times over here on these boats. And the next funny thing I learned about the boats, a lot of these names, William Nis, Sarah Ann, those are not people. Those are ships. Like a lot of them famous names they taught you in history, you start learning those are the names of boats, not people.
Facts.
So Indigenous Intelligence, that link was dropped in the back chat. So if you go check on the C.A.B. Rising show that was done on Monday, you'll be able to get that link. Unless somebody else who's got the link can post it in the chat, which would be great.
That wasn't in front of the PC at the moment, so I can't post it.
Yeah, so Indigenous Intelligence said he's checking for it now. So just keep in mind that there's 3 terabytes full of data. So just be careful where you download it to, because I don't want it to slow down your computer. If you have an external hard drive or numerous external hard drives, that would probably be your best bet. I know
a crew of them.
Yeah, I know that most laptops and most PCs that are bought off the shelf have at least a 1 terabyte hard drive. So, yeah.
And maybe you want it all, maybe you don't. But yeah, it's 3 terabytes.
David Corson, what's this you speak of?
Shipping manifest.
What was the time frame again? Was it 1515 to
from the 1515 to the 1900s? And believe me, you will not have to dig deep in there. The sea is gonna make you Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
The first boat talks about them sending 1,000 indentured servants from England over here to work in the sugar plantations in the islands of Barbados. I'm gonna say it again: 1,000 not melanated people, not no made-up Africans, not no American Indians. 1,000 Europeans got sent to Barbados to work on the plantations in the sugar fields. And there were 7-year contracts. So they were sent over here to work for 7 years. After them contracts were over, they were able to buy land, live, set up shop.
Squat on land.
So after 7 years, you need a new workforce.
Ain't no slavery to me.
Yeah, after 7 years, you need a new workforce. Hey, look at all these Indians. Check this out. Gotta remember what you learned this morning. A lot of these tribes was living around these Europeans for hundreds of years. How the one dude said, forever they've been at peace with each other. Like, hold on, man.
Yes, David. It's 3 terabytes full of data of shipping manifests that people were claiming did not exist. And where is this located, if you don't mind sharing, Bones? Where is this data? Is this data in a newspaper? Is this data in a magazine?
Archives.
Was this
I
data
thought it was in Forbes magazine. It wasn't.
No, National Archives database.
It wasn't in the Sailor's Daily.
Nope. Like I said, doing this, I got good. Yeah, I got good maneuvering through the National Archives now. I got to close my eyes and see the database.
And the reason
they're gonna take my online membership back pretty soon.
They're like, hold on. What did you just access the time? Hold on.
Well, the good news is because we are a small group of people and we're more communal than YouTube, the likelihood of them blocking that access is probably pretty slim.
Oh yeah, best believe it's already being backed up off-site.
Yeah.
You will have access once the website is being maintenance, but once it gets finished, you will have access from the website to all this information as well.
Yes. What you'll find out as you come to A2 is that whenever we tell you something, we're going to have information to back it up. We're going to be able to cite sources and send you to it. If not deliver it to you, at least send you to it to understand and verify what we're talking about. So that's one of the things that you're going to notice about A2. We use YouTube as an outlet because we are in the community doing work. We're helping people in our communities, and we're helping people on A2 help people in their communities. Our goal is not to grow through YouTube. Our goal is to help you grow through your communities, to help you find your tribe, to help you connect to your tribe. And once you connect to your tribe, let us know so we can help your tribe. And another thing, if you've come across a tribe that needs help, and even though they're not your tribe, let us know. Because if we're able to help them, you're the catalyst for them receiving that help, and they will more than likely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, be willing to help you because you helped them first. You know, isn't that part of the golden rule? Treat others as you would have somebody treat you.
Yeah, we gotta go back to our ancestors' ways. Be willing to give to get.
Most people are walking around with their hands out trying to get something, but they don't want to give nothing first.
Broke wrist. All you get is a broke wrist running around with your hands at.
So, another thing I want to help people understand is our goal is not to prove that everybody came from here. Our goal is not to disprove anybody's specific beliefs or autonomous beliefs or what have you. Our goal is to merely and only help you find your tribe. I don't care what type of tribe it is. It could be a tribe in Mozambique. It could be a tribe in Germany. We encourage everybody to do their genealogy, find their tribe, and help their tribe, regardless of what tribe it is. Um, we are not saying or intimating that everybody is a conscious to this land just because you're melanated. We're saying if you believe that you have Indian in your family because somebody in your family said you had Indian in your family, do the research. And if you find that you have Indian in your family, then we'll help you and your family and their tribe. If you find that you have more African in your family, we have somebody to point you to for that. So at the end of the day, I don't care what your tribe is or where they came from. We encourage everybody to do their genealogy to find out where they come from because that will help you answer a lot of your questions, both physically, mentally, and spiritually. So hope that helps. Because I'm not going to allow somebody else to create a narrative of what A2 is about. So we will continue to bang this drum what we're about and mind our business so we can help you mind your business. Because that's what it's about. Go ahead, Bones.
No, just sound effects in the background.
Fair enough. David Corey says he couldn't find those papers. What papers you looking for, David? If you go to the Grand Rising show from Monday, which was it yesterday? Hold on. I'm losing track of days.
Yesterday was Monday. It's either Friday show or Monday show. But when I get back in front of the computer, I believe I had David Corey's email. I can email him the link to it.
I'm sorry, David. Yeah, it had to be either Thursday or Friday. I'm losing track of days. Yeah.
Yeah. If you just send your email, then I'll make sure to get you a link to it so you can get it.
Yeah. My apologies. That'll be no problem. Yeah, my apologies, David. I'm thinking Monday was a couple of days ago. So yeah. So it's either the Friday show or the Monday or the Thursday show. My apologies.
I know how that is.
Then of course his National Archives lost those papers, but I do want it. Well, they didn't lose the papers. They may have moved the papers.
Yeah, no, I know what he's talking about because a lot of times when people type up, it tells you about the fire, how a lot of the shipping records
got
damaged. But this is the thing when you go to the National Archive, it was able to save close to 40% of the shipping records. So I'm like this, if there's 40% and there's 3 terabytes, how much information did they have? Think about it, 40%, 3 terabytes. We talk about text, like you said, text files. Ain't no graphics, ain't no animations, just text.
Ain't no videos.
So you figure if 40% is 3 terabytes, another 40% would be another 3 terabytes, which is 6 terabytes, which leaves you 20%. So half of 3 terabytes would be 1.5 terabytes. So that would put you at 9.5 terabytes total.
Of information, of shipping records, families, names, who you was related to, what was your purpose, even let you know some of them what they were sent here for, the job that they were supposed to be doing. And we learned that most of the people who came over here on boats, they were indebted to the boat captain. That's who you paid your debt to. And we got to remember, ain't the first settlements in America named after boat captains?
A lot of them, yes.
Seemed to me that's who really had the influence. But that's a story for a whole nother day.
Who run it?
Captain Willie.
So yeah, another thing that Bones was sharing with us last week was that the religious individuals that came over here were getting paid how much money to convert people to Christianity?
20 pounds.
£20 per convert.
Yep. To convert people. That's in them same records. It tells you in black and white what the king was paying them.
Indigenous intelligence, there you go. He says now we deal with maritime law in the courtroom. It makes sense to me. Yeah, it
Yeah,
made
because the captains came over. Think about it. I don't care if the king and queen, who they sent over here. Ain't that captain on the boat? And once that boat hit water, international water, who has say so?
the
Not no
captain.
king and queen.
That's my dog.
Ship captains rule the sea. They
Yep.
make the law then. You outside, once you leave land, you outside the kings and queens jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
That's why piracy was a big issue and still is to this day. No man controls the seas.
You breaking up, Bone.
And I said, think about it. You have a big problem with piracy today because no man controls the seas.
Facts. Mm-hmm. And the reason why we were emphasizing and re-emphasizing those documents is because once you're able to find your tribe and you're looking at your tribe's constitution, bylaws, and start looking at the treaties, and doesn't the manifest tell you exactly where these people were going, what states they were going to?
Yeah, they let you know what states down to what local area and the type of work they were doing in most cases.
So if you have access to those documents, now you can prove that the purpose of these immigrants coming here was to take your land. So when you go and renegotiate and look at the treaties and you have everything in order, you can then win back the land that was taken from you, like the Catawba Sapani of South Carolina,
Ding, 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 ding.
who won not only their land back, but they were compensated with $5 million. Now, $5 million might not sound like a lot, but that's a significant amount considering you ain't got to pay taxes on it.
$5 million is a lot if you got a plan on becoming self-sufficient. If
Yeah.
you can't become self-sufficient with $5 million, go choke yourself. Like, nah.
So, yeah. You know me, I try to speak in context, understanding where people's mindset is in reference to what they think or feel or believe or what they taught they're owed as far as reparations of land. So at the end of the day, that's why genealogy is key. And tying back into your tribe is most important, because I wanna address something that was brought to my attention, which was a good conversation I had yesterday. When it comes to people making declarations, and if your declaration is not specific, it's a broad declaration. And what I mean by that, if you're making a declaration for the land in all of the continent, right? And you're asking that it be returned to the people. Well, in order for you to make that declaration, you have had to have spoken to every tribe, because
Yes, sir.
no one gave you the authority to speak on their behalf to get this land back, because some of them are still on that land.
Never left it.
So I'm going to repeat that again. For those people that are making declarations to get back all the land on the continent, and you have not spoken to any of the Indian tribes that are currently on that land, your declaration will not stand, because you don't have the authority to speak for all of the tribes. You got to remember, constitutions was set up and already had the agreements between the existing tribes. So if you are not part of a tribe and you are making a declaration on behalf of land that belongs to a tribe and you did not get their permission, your declaration is already null and void by not only constitutional law, but by tribal law. And
There's a pre-existing contract already out.
So if you think I'm lying, prove me wrong. So not only are you in violation of constitutional law, which you probably don't care nothing about, but if you claim an Aboriginal or indigenous or claiming to be an Indian, tribal law should matter. And you don't have any permission from any tribe to seek any land on their behalf. I'll wait for a signature. I'll wait.
And I'm glad you brought that up too. It gives us a chance to address the UNDRIP and ADRIP, how people are out here telling people to run and go use it, but never read that in the United States and Canada, the two land masses where the American Indian is, it's not a legal document. They don't even honor it.
Nope, they don't honor it. So if 2/3 of the continent where the American Indians are do not honor the ADRIP and the UNDRIP, what good is it? I'll wait. It doesn't matter if you have over 137 countries that have signed off on it. If 2/3 of the continent where the American Indians are don't view it as a legal document, then what good is it? David Corey, of course you didn't know that because the people that are promoting it didn't tell you that. And apparently they didn't read it.
Possibly. That's a possibility.
And that's the problem that we talk about sending people out with half information. Sending people out with half information or stuff that you heard, that somebody else heard, that somebody else heard, that somebody else heard.
That's my jam.
Somebody jamming.
Turn it up, turn it up.
Stop it. Stop it.
You stop it.
I know. That's what I'm trying. Stop it.
Hold on, I just pulled a cardboard out now. I'm about to
hold on. You too? Dusted mine off. I'm like, okay, I got my jumpsuit on.
My apologies for interrupting the conversation.
Like I was saying, is that the problem is a lot of people in this community is spreading around half truths. They're giving you bits and pieces of history that fit their narrative. Now, what we're telling you about ADRIP and UNDRIP is common knowledge. If you go to the website, it's in black and white. The United States does not honor it. So run into a court of law thinking that's going to protect you, they're going to willy lump your behind.
and how it is stated is that the United States supports it, but they do not view it as a legal document. So how are you going to support something if you don't view it as a legal document? It's like patting you on the head and says, "Oh, that's so sweet." You got a piece of paper.
Yeah,
that's basically what they're doing. So you can get mad at me if you want to, but go ahead and take your butt to the
my thing, why you mad at us? We the ones trying to stop you from walking in there and getting bamboozled. Well, telling you the truth. Go check that person that gave you that misinformation.
Peace, Aboriginal Power. Hope everything is well with you, bro. At the end of the day, man, it's, do your research. People are starting to, what's the best way to put this? We have to continue to check our sources. Just because somebody on a platform says something doesn't mean it's right. There are a lot of YouTubers that do a very good job of not only giving you the information, but at least quoting the site's source so you can at least go look it up. Not all of them do that, but there are a lot of them that do, and that's good. But if someone's going to tell you something, at least they should give you the site, the source. If not provided for you, at least tell you where you can go get it, so that at least you can go look it up. Because when somebody told me about the ADRIP and UNDRIP, the first thing I did was went to the website and looked it up. because
And it don't say nothing that people telling you it states.
because the premise was that it was supported by President Barack Obama, which in
Hmm.
fact he did said he supported it, but he never signed it.
So it's a non-legal document.
So if he never signed it and he said he supported it, he basically was giving lip service.
Basically, that's like somebody sending you $1 million check, but they ain't sign it. What good is it?
You can't cash it.
Gee,
What
thanks.
is it? Just sit there and look at it and dream about it. I'm straight.
And this is not said to clown anybody, but this should give you cause to pause when people provide information and they don't provide a source, or they provide you half the information and don't give you the whole story.
Yeah. Our community is flooded. Put it like this: the majority of the stuff that puts us in our community is false narratives and fake stories, and it's sad. And we wonder why people don't take us serious, because we're not taking ourselves serious enough to check the information that we pass or that we speak. And that's very dangerous and deadly, because we manifest things by what we and speaking. I'm like, wow, you can see the conditions on how we in here. Instead of all of us taking in that pride that we all have a brain, so let's all seek to know better. Let's all seek to be well informed. We have to stop letting one or two or three seek the information and taking it as is, because we're all human and we're all prone to mistakes. We're all prone to misread something, mislabel something. But if we do it together, research it and vet it, then we stand a better chance of getting to the bottom of this and stop all the foolishness that's blocking the truth.
And David, I appreciate what you're saying about us, but at the end of the day, we're about accountability more so than truth. And the reason why I say that is because that's the reason why we try our best to give you the links whenever we're reading something. Not because we want you to just read it. We want you to look at it and show us where we miss something. Show us where we error in something. Because we are not above correction. I know I'm going to make mistakes. I anticipate mistakes being made. So we're looking to you in the chat to catch those mistakes and let us know that, hey, this is wrong, or could you have looked at it this way? We're not putting the information out there for you to regurgitate exactly what we said. We're putting the information
Hold
out
us
there,
accountable.
yeah, for you to look at it and hold us accountable, because we've been wrong on stuff, and we gonna be wrong because we're human. So
Mm.
yeah, that's the reason why we do that, and we're gonna hold ourselves to a higher standard than we hold anybody else. But at the end of the day, we're encouraging everyone who has a platform to make
Raise the
sure,
ball.
yeah, make sure the information you put out there is correct. Not saying that you're not, but be double and triple sure about it, because you have people that will follow you because of your name and because of the amount of followers you have. And if they end up doing something that harms them or their family, that's your fault.
Yeah, that responsibility falls on you, because you push the information out there. Whether you know the person or not, that's your responsibility.
And if you're not willing to take that responsibility, then you shouldn't be putting out the information. That's just me. That's
Yeah,
my
it's time for us, if we want to be taken serious, we want people to look at the work we do as honest work, then we must treat it that way. We must make sure everything that's put out to represent us is factual. We must leave the emotions at the door, because the emotions and feelings is what's keep jamming us up. We got to check that and leave it at the door and make sure everything that comes out is factual, because we must remember what we're doing here today. 100 years from now, somebody can play back. And we want to make sure what we state is factual, because we can mess up so bad. We can mess up for the next 7 generations. And I'm for one not trying to do that.
I think that part needs to be repeated, Bones. Say that part again about being recorded and it's going
Yeah,
to be heard
please,
again. I don't
please
think
do.
people understand that.
That everything that we're doing today, 100 years from now, people can play back and listen to see what we were doing, to see the fight that we was having. So it's up to us, the recorders of our story, our history, to make sure we get it right, to make sure it's factual, to make sure that 100 years from now, when people look back and see that we stood on the side of right. Because aren't we going down now? And we're realizing that a lot of our ancestors stood on the wrong side. Ain't we learning this right now? And the majority and the major thing we should take from these stories is not to make their mistakes. Remember, that's what the past teaches us, not to make the mistakes, not to idolize it, not to romanticize it, not to get stuck in there, not to live in it, to learn from the mistakes of your past so you don't have them in your present or your future.
And like David Corey says, just like celebrate celebrities, once it comes out your mouth, it has to be truth. Facts, David.
Hmm.
I mean, we're the goal is to raise the bar. The goal is not to be as good as we were yesterday. It's to be better. There's already been a foundation laid. One of the things that my mentors have always told me is that my ceiling should be your floor. And what that means is you shouldn't have to start where I started.
Facts.
I should create a platform or a situation to where you are in a better situation because I showed up.
Facts.
That's major.
That's what it's about. That's why we built this. So moving forward, 7 generations, it's designed to outlive all of us. That is its purpose. So this research and this digging that we're doing now, future generations won't have to work as hard because we be done compiled a database. We done be compiled our own infrastructure, our own service to save our information. If we don't do it, who gonna do it? Can't expect nobody else to care about you if you don't care about you. Person can't change you if you don't want to change yourself. I'm gonna say it again. A person cannot change you. You must want to change yourself.
And I think people need to understand and be aware that all of this public information will go into a National Archive database. You do know that, right? This is public information. So everything that you type, everything that you say, everything that you text will be archived for public inspection.
Whether it's on YouTube, whether it's in Hangouts back chat, whether it's in other social platforms, everything. As a people, please, let's take this in and realize this. Everything we do on these social platforms is there forever. So every time we sit here and we record the most worst of our neighborhoods and we glorify it and place it there, guess what? It's there forever. Every time we sit here and we go to these channels and we support the BS, guess what? It's there forever. People can look back and see, well, oh, you were supporting this. Oh, you was radical. Then you wonder why it's being held against you. We must do better. We got to do better. The future generation is depending on us. So what we going to do? Be cowards and punks and drop the ball on them and let them carry it?
So Indigenous Intelligence asks a question. He says, I can go back to 1780, for example, and find ancestors in the same spot on records as Black American, Negro American, etc., but nothing that says Indian. So how do we narrow that tribe identification down? So in Indigenous Intelligence, we got a lot of people that can help with this, especially Doodle Vision. If you could go back to 1780, you're actually 10 years prior to the 1790 census. So if you have first name, last name, death date, birth date, and county, then you can find your tribe. Hopefully that makes sense. Is there anything that I'm missing from that? He says he can go back to 1780 and find names, and it said nothing says Indian. So does he need anything other than first name, last name, death date, birth date, and the county in order to find his tribe?
I believe that's it.
Yeah. Especially around that time. If he can get that time around before like the first before the 1790 census, because there was a census before that. But before the 1790 census, yeah. Just find the tribes that's in the area of your ancestors.
This is like I'm from LaGrange, Georgia, and it has a lot of different Indian tribes on the Georgia-Alabama border. Again, if you go back three to four generations, and you have the like I said, the first name, last name, death date, birth date, and the county, we can tie in. You can definitely tie into your tribes. And the reason why you want to go back that far is because the majority of the tribes that are either registered locally, statewide, or either federally recognized, they already have their list of names. They know their surnames. They know the people, and the genealogists of the tribes can know just by listening to your surname, and they'll ask you, you know, they'll be like, well, what's your last name? And they'll be like, okay, well, you're 9 times out of 10, you're from this tribe in this area. I've actually seen it happen. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, happened with me with my ancestors is Waccamaw with the Baileys. Just off of the name, somebody was able to recognize the name and knew what tribe they went back to. So yeah, it does happen. It actually does happen.
David Corey was talking in reference to everything being recorded. He said, some of you Nagas talk crazy, and your people will see you. That's fact, because people don't realize that their children's children will be able to look this up and see, man, Grandpa TMH was talking reckless. What was he thinking? Why would he do that? Because again, this is after the fact. This is after everything has happened. This is after everything has come to fruition. So right now, we could be talking crazy, but after the history has been settled and dust is settled, if what you're saying doesn't line up and it makes you seem totally out of sorts, your ancestors are going to look at you like, your descendants are going to look at you like, what were you thinking?
It's like I was taught when I was younger. Whatever you're going to set your mind to do in life, make sure it can stand the test of time. And if it can't stand the test of time, is it worth even doing? Meaning, if you're going to build something that's not going to outlast you, that's not going to help people hundreds and hundreds of years from now, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
To be recognized, there's a lot more easier ways to get recognized than YouTube, believe me.
Yeah. For those of you who are putting information about your ancestry, do me a favor. No sellout, can you drop the email address?
I'm doing that right now.
Yeah, so they can send their email address to us so we can help them out. Because the chat is starting to move a lot faster than I can read.
Yeah, David Corey, I sent you a message to find out where we can help you with, on what information and what area you need help with. And what I'm gonna start doing is sending out links to people that's in particular areas to make it easier. So like people that's in Texas area, put all in one link. People that's in Alabama, make it a lot more efficient for us to work together and work with each other. So y'all give me to the end of this week, and I should have all that set up for everyone. And I had an email, so people who contact, you'll start getting the links to these groups, so you can start working with the people that's in your area, or people that might have knowledge of your tribes and stuff.
So I want to welcome what I call him a distinguished guest, and what I consider him to be an elder, even though he's younger than I am. When he's younger than I am in age, but he's got more wisdom than I have when it comes to this Indian way of life, and that's doo-doo vision. What's going on, sir? How you doing?
Greetings, Brother Thomas. Greetings, Brother Bones. Brother No Sellout.
Grand Rising.
Peace, Doodoo.
No, Lady Free is in the chat. The mothers, Brother David Corey, AP. I can't see all the rest of it. I'm in my mobile office here. So if I miss this, then I'll try to catch you on the rebound, because I know that the chat was moving pretty fast. You don't text and drive. So I wasn't texting. But it's good to be here, and y'all definitely dropping some more nuggets. That any other people or groups or website or channels, they get charged for this information. venue that you can go to is actually going to provide this information for you, for free. So that I yield the mic.
Now, I know that you may have been listening earlier. So we're actually talking about your tribe, the Choctaw. And what we discovered or what we learned, again, taking it in proper context because this is Wikipedia and we know all of this is not true. But from what we've seen and what we've read, whether it's Push Mataha or whether it's Greenwood LaFleur, it sounds like they never, up until a certain point, or at least up until the Revolutionary War, had never turned a bow against the United States, and they were dealing with the United States since England got to Virginia. Being that this is your tribe and you have very extensive knowledge with the Choctaw peoples, what about this information when it comes to Greenwood LaFleur and the Choctaw Nation dealing with the United States? How much of this is actually accurate and what needs to be corrected, if you don't mind us asking?
Yeah, please do. Thank you.
Oh, yes, sir. That was actually, and see, they don't tell the other part. There was a separation. Because, at one point, the Choctaw and the Chickasaw were once one. And those that fought against the United States were not considered Choctaw, and still was, put it this way, they're considered today Mississippi Choctaw. So your Choctaw that you find in Oklahoma were those Choctaws that have never fought against the United States. But then there was the Mississippi Choctaw that rebelled, and that's why I shared with those what happened, to my great-great-granddad several times removed, that he refused to sign the Treaty of the Dancing Rabbit Creek, and he had to be eliminated. So there were several of us that were removed. Some of us were enslaved. Some of us left and went along to the rest of the people within our nation along the Gulf Coast. They didn't ever tell that story. All you hear about primarily is the Choctaw in Oklahoma, but that's a separate branch from the Mississippi Choctaw. So yeah, but you all are on it. They never tell that side of the story. But part of what was going on with the Europeans led to our Civil War. Because again, Choctaw and Chickasaw were never two separate people. We were always one until we had our conflicts, but it was never like this until we had outside influence.
Right. So to further promote what we talk about, because on A2 platform, we always promote finding your tribe, tying into your tribe, and knowing the other side of the story, which is obviously what you have. You have the other side of the story. So is it safe to say that had you not tied into your tribe, or had you not known who your tribe was, the information that you're providing for us from your elders, would you even know this information?
No, there would be no way to know this information. If I just generalize and say, okay, yeah, this is what we did, but then you still have to look back and say, okay, well, why are some of my people still here? Why are some of my people still there? Why are they in this establishment? These are things that you would only hear from the elders. Now, there are documents that are written, but there is no way to know what you're looking for initially without tying into the tribe and actually going to your elders. I gave the example yesterday, and I'll give the example publicly. It's the same thing as when your grandmother or your mother, people would come over when you were younger, and you say, oh, this is my friend that you met at school or whatever, or met on the playground. And the first thing your grandmother would ask is, who are your people? Who are your folks? And they'd be like, oh, I don't know, and I don't know who I am. And then they'll be polite, kind, give them something to eat. They give them some beverage or whatever, something to drink. And afterwards, they're like, baby, I don't want you hanging around them. I don't like them. Our spirits just don't meet. And it's the same thing amongst the elders here. If you don't know who you are, they're not going to give information to a stranger, to a foreigner, because they understand that's how we got in a situation that we're in today. I yield the mic.
Okay, so there you have it from an Indian who's connected and tied into his tribe. Like we continue to promote and share with you, we're not only just going to give you one side of the story, we're going to do our best to provide you with, aside from an individual who's part of a tribe who can answer, um, either confirm or debunk what's being
Hmm.
written, to give you the full scope. And we encourage others to do the same, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where the information comes from as long as the information is accurate.
I want to take this time right now to give a grand rising and peace to all the Gordons that's listening this rising. I had a cousin that just hit me up, wanted to know the tribe names again. Our family is Wakama, Cherokee, and Saponi. I already sent the information, so y'all should be getting it pretty soon. But those are the 3 tribes I found back in our family so far. Didn't mean to switch it real quick. Had relatives hit me up on air.
No, I mean,
All that.
look, we talking genealogy and time back into your tribe, so it kind of fits. I'm just saying. That's just me.
No, keep it to yourself.
Really, this is what we doing.
The opposite there, right?
Mm. So okay, and what Doodle Vision basically told us is that there was a chief who did not want to sign the treaty. Now they didn't talk about that here. What they talked about was the fact that um, Greenwood stayed in Mississippi, and that uh, Bushu Latubi left to go with the tribe to Oklahoma. So again, there's 3 sides of every story. And Doodle Vision, who is Choctaw, has confirmed that that was true, but there was something that was missing. There was a chief that was killed because he would not sign the was it the Dancing Rabbit Treaty? I mean, that's important to know, don't you think?
Yep. Yes, it is.
Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek.
Yeah, Dancing Rabbit. You said Dancing Rabbit Creek Treaty? That's what it is.
Yes, sir. Because those that was my clan that it was named after, because it gets back to whatever sign you were born under, or whatever clan you're affiliated with. So, there's some that are Catawba Sioux that are Wolf. Well, myself and Tata, we're the Rabbit clan. So we were the one that came with the strong drink. We were the elders. We were the ones that kept all the wisdom and the knowledge. And so when he decided not to sign, for those in the chat, they may say, "Oh, he's making up a story," but it's in the book by Aborigines of North America. It's the Native Indian, or North American Indian, traditionally applied to the Aborigines in North America. It is by George Turner. It was published in 1836, but this was all of his findings that he was going along throughout the Southeast and going into the Southwest. And he was actually documenting these tribes. He was living amongst these tribes. And so that was part of the story on what they would give. And they were describing, like I said, my great-great-granddad several times back by name and who he was, and saying that he actually drowned due to the water in his strong drink. Now, I've never heard of such, but that was the actual Indian council that they had, that they decided that. But of course, at that time, you had Europeans, you had mulattoes, and you had Melungeons that had taken over, and they were appointed by the U.S. government at that time. So, this falls under Andrew Jackson as well. And so he refused to sign, and because he did not sign, my people were scattered, and some ended up going along the Trail of Tears, others stayed there and got labeled Negro. And the crazy thing about it is, after the Civil War, my relatives that stayed there actually end up getting paid to rebuild those parts of Mississippi along the Mississippi River and in Alabama. So, and then those of us that ended up here in Texas and Louisiana. So that's the book I wanted to give you. I'm sorry about the exact title because I'm on the road, but I'll put the exact title. I believe, Brother Thomas, that I put it in the back chat. I know we have a lot of conversations, but it's back there, a few weeks ago. So but it's by George Turner, and it was published in 1836 out of Philadelphia. Because I don't want anyone to say that, because I know some people make up stuff and say that they, kin to I Dream of Jeannie and all that stuff. But it's actually my folk and getting the rest of the story. But if I had not heard that over the years through my elders, I wouldn't even know where to look and find any documentation supporting what they have been telling me. So with that, I yield the mic. I know I've been on my soapbox for a while. I appreciate you, brother.
Brother Vision, I have a question. Is the name of the book Traits of Indian Character as Generally Applicable to the Aborigines of North America?
Bingo. Got me. That's it. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that, Brother No Sellout. I know he always comes. See, y'all think Brother No Sellout be sleeping. Brother No Sellout over there, he's dropping bombs. Y'all better look
Resident
out.
librarian. Our resident librarian on the panel. Yeah, I need that book after you, though.
That was sweet. Book $1,500.
Okay, well that might be a
It's
book.
like,
we
yeah.
gonna get it. Yeah, $1,500. We're gonna have to get it. We have to get it.
1,500. All right.
Yeah, that might be a book that have to be an A2 purchase.
Yeah, that's
I know, right? That's what I'm about to say. We're gonna have to get it.
We're gonna buy that.
I'll send you as soon as I get home, I will send you the PDF for free.
What? Stop.
Yep.
All right.
It's already been scanned in. I already had it scanned in.
Oh, thank you. You saved me $1,500. Appreciate
I
that.
know, right? Email us at autonomousassimile@gmail.com.
Most definitely. I'll send it. And it also has some information in there that you'll find another segment under the liar. And when George Turner was actually going along the southeast, and they called him a native, and he says that there were people out west, and he pointed in the direction, he didn't say west, but he pointed in that direction of going into California, and saying he saw a men that was there that were dark copper skin and had hair like wool, and they called him a liar, and they were referring to the Khalifa tribe. So anybody that keeps saying that we weren't here, that's in that same book. I want to say it's on page 75. Don't hold me to that, but it's somewhere in the 70s. Like I said, when I get home, I'll send it to you. But he was describing the people that lived out west in California, the Khalifa tribe, and hair like wool. So show me anybody, anywhere else, any other group of people that had hair like wool. I yield the mic.
That's what's up. Appreciate the info.
So is it okay that once you send it to us that we can post it on the Conscious Assembly website so people can take a look at it? Is that okay?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. No problem at all. Like I said, that was something, that was an investment, that $1,500, because my deal is that I don't want anyone to go by what I say. I want to be able to provide the information to support, and that's, with the elders, they really don't care whether you believe them or not. So it's just comforting to know, because I know we are of that age of you got to show it to me, not in writing, it didn't happen. And so the elders are like, hey, this is what happened. I'm going to tell you the rest of the story. I'm going to tell you the real deal. But I can honestly say the elders that I've sat down with, everything that they've told me falls right in line. And then later on, I'll find documentation, and even friends or foes, allies and adversaries and everybody else have come and said, you know what, I saw that in a book somewhere, and I had no clue that it was in a book. I'm just going based upon what my elders are sharing with me. And again, that's one of the benefits of doing your genealogy, finding out who you are, tying yourself back to the tribe, because once you know what tribe you belong to, then the elders will reveal information to you, and you will be surprised on what they are able to give you and what they know, and they just won't share it with the masses because they don't know who you are, because they don't trust anybody, they don't like dealing with the internet, they don't deal with any of that. So sometimes it's just best once they know who you are, you start naming folks. That's why I name drop, and sometimes in a negative way. I do that now for that reason. You do enough name dropping, and somebody's going to know somebody. 6 degrees of separation. I yield the mic.
Ding, ding.
So with that being said, and you having such a close tie with your tribe and how they operate. And you know we've had this conversation before, but I want those that have not had the opportunity to hear you speak from the Choctaw perspective and from your elders' perspective. How does your tribe feel about individuals who are looking to be either a sovereign citizen, meaning that they're wanting to get outside the system and be totally detached, make declarations, and claim land that doesn't belong to them, or claim titles as chiefs without having a chiefdom or a or a council? What does your tribe feel up? How do they feel about that?
I will always give the example of what my great grandmother used to say, who lived to be 104. She would always say, "Who died made you chief." So who died, it made you chief, or who elected you chief? Because our tribe, what we do, we actually have elections, and there are different communities, and those communities, it's set up a little. It's almost like the U.S. system because they got it from us. But it's a little differently. When you're representing your community, it goes this way: the one with the most votes stays in for a 4-year cycle, election cycle. Those with the second most votes, you stay in at a 2-year election cycle. And those with the third most votes stay in for an annual cycle. So if you had the third most votes, you come up again next year. The second most votes, every other year, you come up. And so that's the way to keep it fresh, and that's the way to keep it honest. And then the one that is elected chief, he or she is taken in. It's by majority vote. It's no, electoral college or anything like that. What the U.S. system does is straight majority vote, but they break the vote down by community and by representation. But for those that are going and trying to seek sovereign citizenship, they were asked, "What are you doing for the tribe?" And you would be considered lower than the Europeans that came over here and did that. You're not even, because they would say you were one of us, and why would you do that to your own? There's one thing for a foreigner, for a stranger to do that, for you to do that for your own, because why would you want to separate from your people? That's not logical. So you would be considered an outsider. You would be considered a traitor, and most often than not, so things would happen to you. You would receive a mark in places that people will be able to distinguish that you are a traitor. I'm gonna leave it at that because I know this is the children's program. I yield the mic.
All right. That's
Basically, he's saying do it if you want to. It'll be bombs over your head. Put it in layman's terms, reading between the lines.
You're breaking up a little bit, Bones. Um,
Mic check 1 2 1 2. That's clearer.
okay, so this is the first time we've had this question since I've been on A2.
Yeah,
Arthur
yeah.
Gray asked, "Are you guys on Patreon yet?" So I'll let Bones handle that. Bones, are we on Patreon,
No,
Well,
we're not on Patreon, and we would never be on Patreon.
and why?
why you say that?
The reason why I say that here is because A2 is not designed to take from the community. A2 is designed to give to the community. Here we go out and we get the resources and finances.
Mic check.
From the
Wait a minute.
instead
Wait a minute. This needs to
of
be loud and clear. Mic check. Do a
mic
cartwheel.
check 1 2. That's better.
Nope.
Nope.
1
Keep
2.
it up. Keep checking.
Mic check. Mic check.
Little choppy. Little choppy.
1 1 2 1 2.
What?
Come on.
You?
Basically, A2 will never take
There we go.
finances from the. A2 is designed to get resources from other entities that was designed with our finances, and we take them finances to help our community. Now, for your own, if there's something that you want to donate on your own, that's up to you. But we will never come out to the community to ask you to donate anything towards A2. Whether we collect $1 from anyone ever, we will always provide these services for free. There would never be a charge.
And to answer your question, David, Corey, it's a nonprofit. Um,
Nonprofit organization.
The
No
correct
monetized streams.
right, and the correct statement is it's a tax exempt entity. Nonprofit is a term that's generally used, but at the end of the day, it's a tax exempt organization. Um, and the whole purpose, like Bone said, is to help the community because at the end of the day, we are truly staying on code. We are here to give to the community and not take from the community. And Arthur Gray says, I'm going to email you about genealogy. I'm at a wall on all great grandparents on both sides. That's fine. Just email us.
Yeah, no problem. And as long as you're actually doing your genealogy work, we can help you. But if you contact us and you have nothing done, that's not really help. We're doing your genealogy. And that's
Facts.
not
So
what we do.
yeah,
You're
hit
doing
a
the work.
wall. The wall is not
Yeah.
logging into the website. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, logging into the website is not a wall. You know, and those of you who need an account for Ancestry, contact us because we also have a community ancestry.com account for those who also need help with their genealogy. We have a community account. So hit us at the Gmail if you're interested in that. And that too is a free service that you'll never be charged for.
Okay. So thanks for reaching out, and we do this for y'all. Like I said, we are a organization or community. We're community first, and YouTube is a platform for us to help you reach your communities. We're not here to gain a large YouTube following. Our goal is to help you grow in your communities because those are the people that you have influence over that know who you are that can vouch and validate you. I mean, people know they hear Bones' voice, they hear my voice, they hear Doodle Vision's voice, um, no Sellout's voice. Y'all know our voices, but y'all don't know us. And even though we're here for you, we have a greater, I guess for lack of a better term, we have greater influence in our own communities because those people know us. They know our families, they know where we're from, they know what we do in the community. So the goal is to help everybody help their community. Spread the word about, if people have heard that they have Indian in their family, pointing them in the right direction. Again, it's not to convince people that they're Indian, because if you don't believe that you're Indian or you don't want to be Indian, that's fine. My job is not to convince you that you're Indian. But if you have found out that you have Indian in your family, then let's do the genealogy. Let's find out if that's the truth. And if it's the truth, then we're going to help you and your tribe. And that's what we're here for. And Arthur Gray says he has a paid Ancestry account. So Arthur, if that's a fact, if that's the case, then what we can do is you could, if you feel comfortable, because I know some people don't, there's a way to actually download that your Ancestry account so we can upload it and we can just walk you through everything. That's if you feel comfortable. If you don't, we can always do a screen share and walk you through it. Because I did a screen share with Bone, so there's more than one way
Or
to
you
help
can also give people permission to see your website as well by adding their email addresses to your ancestry.com account.
facts.
And also, if I may, one clue that will help a lot of us out is don't get caught up in the spelling of the surname. Because in my case, I have found 5 different spellings of my surname. And the reason being is if you are able to trace yourself back and say you have an Ancestry account and you're getting all this information, but then the surname isn't the same. But if you know that your great great grandmother had children named Johnny, Bobby, Ricky, Mike, Ralph, and all the rest of them, then chances are now the spelling is a little different, but it's the same location, same county. You need to start looking into that because you'll find that more often than not. And then once you do that, then Ancestry will send you a little green leaf and say, here's another hint, here's another clue, here's another clue, here's another clue. But sometimes we get caught up on the spelling of the surname, and that's what gets us hung up because we expect that to be the spelling.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I'm glad he mentioned the spelling too, and also the variations and similarity in names. How we learned in my genealogy with the Margaret and Peggy, Elizabeth and Beth, that sometimes that
That's
when the names are like that, there's different variations of the name that means the same. So also be aware of that. That's why you want to make sure you fill in the siblings too, the brothers and sisters, uncles and aunties, so that way you can get a better pinpoint on that family member.
Yeah, because it's easy to find information when as much of the siblings as possible are filled in. Because just like you're doing your genealogy, there are family members that you might not be aware of that are doing genealogy, and what you'll find is you'll be able to link to them because y'all share, you know, a relative, like your father, sister, descendants might be doing their genealogy, and they'll have all her information. Well, if they share the same father, then 9 times out of 10, that will help you with some missing pieces. But if you don't have that sibling there, then you will never know, or you will never be able to connect those dots. So
that's major. If anybody heard that for the first time, that's major. Because a lot of people, I know I was, and I think Pamela Hall was also, just doing grandparents, great grandparents, grandparents, the parents, the parents, the parents. No uncles, no aunties, no nobodies, and hitting walls. So, yeah, I want to plug everybody in there.
hopefully that helps. And the last question that I want to ask Doodle Vision, because I know you're a busy man, is we had spoken earlier about people when people are doing declarations, because I'm hearing a lot of individuals that are making declarations against the United States government. I'll put it in terms that doesn't sound so aggressive. They're making declarations to the United States government, and the declarations are in some context of, well, we need you to remove yourself from our land and return all of our land back to us. Now, these individuals who are doing this, some of them are part of a tribe, but many of them are not. So, as an individual who is part of a tribe and who speaks closely with the elders, hearing what I just said, you might need me to clarify some things. What would your take on that, being an Indian who knows their tribe, who knows what land they came from, and who knows the council of their tribe? What would your take be on hearing something like that?
A declaration is an act of war. And if you're a part of a tribe, and you again, it gets back to representation. Did the elders or the chief, did they give you permission or the authority to speak on behalf of that tribe? Because if you're going, let's just say, for example, I say, okay, I'm Choctaw, and I'm speaking on behalf of all Choctaws, and I'm going to make this declaration against you, the United Snakes of America Incorporated. Well, first of all, I'm gonna get that hook like Sandman Sam used to do on Showtime at the Apollo. I'm gonna get hooked up out of there by my elders and by the chief and by the council. So they're gonna ask me, what in the world are you doing? How are you speaking for the entire tribe? Who gave you the authority? Was there any council meeting that said that you were the designee to do this? So a declaration is an act of war. So go back and look at the Declaration of Independence that we call. That was an act of war. So anytime you're making a declaration, I hope that you have your military or your militia together, because they can take you as being a threat, and they will bomb the HE double hockey sticks out of you. So I would advise you, if you're gonna make a declaration and you want to be a sovereign citizen, you better have your military together. I didn't say police. I didn't say an agency. I said your military, a militia. So there's a difference between a police department, which is an agency, and a militia, which is representing a government entity. Huge difference. I yield the mic.
And I'm glad that he mentioned that, because Why do everybody forget that the Declaration of Independence was attached to a war? I think my largest declaration on history, and everybody fails to remember that it's attached to a war after this.
And let's not forget the declaration that the South made to secede from the state. And as they made that declaration to secede from the 13 colonies, they also reached out to the allies of those 13 colonies to form peace treaties. Now, why would they have to form peace treaties if that declaration was to separate from the states and not
Ooh,
the
ooh.
not the European countries? Go ahead, Bones.
Basically, because if they didn't, then they'll be at war with the allies because they didn't make treaties with them. Them treaties would be broken.
Oh, okay, just checking. And again, you don't have to believe anything that we say. Go do the research. Go look up declarations, and if you check out the uh, the beginning, what was it? 2 weeks ago when we started the American Revolution, and they talked about
Uh-huh.
how the Union told France and Spain that if you accept the South secession, they will consider it an act of war. So we're not making this up. And I just gave you a point of reference that you can go check it out. And if you look at declarations and how declarations are viewed, you will also see that it's viewed as an act of war. So if there is an instance where somebody in the United States of America has made a declaration and it was accepted by the United States and they got what they wanted, then you should be able to provide proof and these people should still be in existence. But I'll wait on that. I'm not saying it hasn't been done. I'm just saying I haven't seen it. So for those of you who are making these declarations, can you please show us some proof of where it has worked and where it is still working today? And I don't think.
Question.
Go ahead.
Before the United States did their declaration, didn't Benjamin Franklin go over there and live for 20 years as an ambassador to get allied nations? Just asking.
He had already been started developing diplomacy. Now all y'all gotta do is go look that up. Diplomatic relations with France and Spain. Go ahead.
In order for the United States to win its independence, it had to ally and be recognized by Spain, France, other foreign countries like Prussia, other countries, right?
Yeah, in order when you make a
And this is
declaration,
not.
go ahead.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
You're breaking up, Bones. So I didn't hear what you said.
No, I'm saying go ahead. I think it was going in and out.
Oh, basically, what I was saying is when declarations are made, there has to be some preparation before that declaration is made because you have to be acknowledged by another, um, I guess for lack of a better term, a sovereign city, a sovereign state. So the moment your declaration is made, someone has to acknowledge your declaration in order for it to even take hold. Because if no one recognizes your declaration, then the United States is not going to take you seriously. So if you do your research and find out when the Declaration of Independence was made, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Morocco and Prussia were the first two entities to accept that Declaration of Independence from Great Britain. Don't believe me? Go check it out. So for all those people that are making these declarations, I hope y'all did your research. I hope y'all got in contact with some independent states or some independent countries, and I hope those independent countries aren't at war with the United States. Just saying. Is there anything else anybody want to add to that, or got any questions on? Because that's pretty much all I got.
Yeah, that about sums it up. I mean, they don't have to take our word for it. It's in plain print. Look it up and read it for themselves. I mean, history tells you how it works.
And the
I don't know no one who did it before and was successful.
and the reason why I asked this question to an Indian who's in contact with not only the chief of the council is because for the past 2 months I've been asking for proof that it has been done, that it can be done. I've asked for proof for those who are talking to people who are, who are getting co-signed by actual Indians who have a tribal card. They're co-signing on this type of action. And I said that if it's okay to do that, then why has your council not signed off on it? And apparently, for whatever reason, these individuals that are supporting this are too scared or too lazy to get an Indian's perspective on it. So since they chose not to do it, and since I'm not scared of no man, I'm gonna ask because either I'm gonna get an answer or I'm not gonna get an answer. So since they weren't brave enough to do it, get it, brave Indian. Anyway, since they weren't brave enough to do it, then I decided I'm gonna ask every Indian that I come across so that it will not appear that I'm saying something that's inaccurate or I'm not adhering to tribal law or I'm just going off of my own personal feelings. So every time we come across an Indian who's in charge, who's in reference to a tribe, or we come across a chief, just know this question will get asked. And what I'm doing is because what I want you in the audience to understand that if you come across this information, when you come across somebody touting this, they're going to need a preponderance of evidence to go against what a bunch of real Indians are saying. Or they're just basically going to have to call all the Indians a liar. And I highly doubt they would do that in a public forum. So that's the reason why I'm doing it. Because again, I don't like it when other people try to dictate the narrative of what A2 is doing. So I always want to make sure that when something is done, that you hear it here, and no one is going to sit there and tell you what our agenda is or is not.
Mm-hmm. Simple. And my question always is, what's so hard about tying into genealogy to your tribe and helping your tribe? What's so hard about honoring the ancestors and doing it the right way? Why are we trying to reinvent the wheel? To me, that's no different than the Joseph Brandt or any other person that we read about that wanted power and control for themselves. Because if you know that this isn't the ancestors' way and you promote it and you stand beside it, why are you doing it? Because you want to be controlled? You don't want to honor the ways of the ancestors? You want to do the thing? I mean, really, these are the questions that we have to ask when people present this to us.
And that's what I see more often than not, of those that don't want any order, any structure. And none of the tribes were ever about chaos. I just don't see it. All my research and all my years and speaking to elders, it's always been about doing things decent and in order. So anyone that wants to just find out you were an Indian literally yesterday, and then 2 days later you a chief, and then you're the top chief. You are the executive chief, and I'm trying to figure out how does that work in anybody's real world. And again, who's falling up under that? And don't just tell me those in your household, that's your tribe. We're not buying that. We're not doing that at all. This is not Smith Smart Liquor, not Billy D. Williams, smooth taste and all the rest of that stuff. Don't come to me with that. You only got 6 or 7 people in your household and talking about that's my tribe. Doesn't work that way. Again, where is your militia? And as we talk about all the time, y'all better study Pretoria. If y'all don't study Pretoria, if y'all don't look up Family Guy, can't touch this, y'all go ahead and you see what's gonna happen to you.
I was about to post it in the chat.
You go right ahead.
I was gonna post it in the chat. I'm
You go right ahead to see what's gonna happen to you.
So quick question. When people that are claiming titles that they have not earned, especially when it comes to tribal names or chiefs and things of that nature, but in that same vein, they talk about honoring their ancestors. Is there any way possible, because I could be wrong, is there any way possible that naming yourself a chief when you don't have a tribal, when you haven't been elected, or when you haven't taken out a chief, is there any way possible that doing those things or violating tribal law is any way honoring your ancestors?
No, it is the total opposite of that. It is an insult to do that because you can't talk about honoring the ancestors when they did it a certain way. Now, again, if you want to, and I know the majority of people in the chat have seen Black Panther. Now, you can become a chief if you challenge the chief to a battle. But here's the kicker. If the chief is wise enough, the chief doesn't have to fight you or battle you. They will select someone to fight you. Y'all seen, like I say, Black Panther, and I know y'all seen Ace Ventura. Remember, they selected someone
Tommy
to fight
Davis.
Ace Ventura. So you
Yeah,
go right
always
ahead.
the best
Man.
fighter. They're gonna be the best fighter for you to fight. Come on, man. All right. My law.
Quincy Osha.
And then more often than not, even if you win that battle, no one is going to follow you because you did it dishonorably. It's one thing if there's a division within the, and that happens. And some cases you'll read about, there being a split. Again, that gets into the split between the Chickasaw and the Choctaw. There was a split, and that's okay. And they were still civil toward each other. It happens. But to just go and say, I don't want to do this battle, or I'm trying to take somebody out, because you think about whatever you're doing to get on top, someone is going to do that to you to get on top. It's called karma. What goes around comes around. So you cannot say that I'm in a position of authority and you haven't earned it. Who are the elders that you're talking to? And then you come to find out, really, they aren't talking to anybody. They aren't talking to anybody. They got something out of a book. They read a couple of words, and here we go. And they do a chant, and they put Noxzema on their face, and then they go live and say they're a chief. It doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. I yield the mic.
So again, it's a situation of what the words you speak. If the words you speak doesn't line up with your actions, then it's best for us to believe your actions versus your words. Is that what I'm understanding? In other words,
sorry. Yes,
go ahead.
yes, sir. Those things must align. If they don't, if your words don't align, see, I'm not old, but I'm old enough to remember. And it's still the elders that are walking around when they say "word is bond." That it wasn't just a lyrics or a catchphrase to a rap song. Word was actually bond. That what you do should measure up with what you're saying, and what you're saying should measure up with what you're doing. My grandmother had a saying that, you speak what you're doing and speaking so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying. So you can tell me with your mouth that you're honoring the ancestors, but your actions would say otherwise. Now, it's even one thing to have disagreements amongst each other. But for me to go on an 8-hour rant about a disagreement that I had with a brother or a sister and I've never spoken to them, that's dishonorable. Now, after we've had several conversations privately and we brought in a private counsel and you still about that shucking and jiving and that tomfoolery, then that's when you go public to let the whole world know. And we've already read about people being excommunicated from tribes. You all did a couple of weeks ago. There was a chief that got his head bashed in because he was selling land. He was being dishonorable. So if we're gonna go all the way, let's go all the way. Don't sit here and say that you're honoring the ancestors, but you're not honoring any of their ways. You're not honoring any of that. And for you to detach yourself from your relatives is the most dishonorable thing that you can do. I yield the mic.
Thank you for that, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay, so that's you heard it from an Indian, and we're going to continue to get a poll on what other Indians and what other tribes think. So this is not going to be one-sided. I want to make sure that we reach out to as many Indians and to as many chiefs and to as many genealogy people as possible, to get their viewpoint because we want to make sure this is fair. But also at the end of the day, if you come across any Indians or any chiefs, these are questions that you may want to ask. And also too, why not ask the people that's doing this? You know, what does your chief have to say about what you're doing? What does the council have to say about what you're doing? You know, have you talked to any chiefs? Have you talked to any council? Have you visited any tribes to see if what you're doing they're okay with? And
Do
then
you have a tribe? Do you have a chief?
and then listen to the answer. And then their answer will tell you everything that you need to know. So if you're going to speak out your mouth that you're honoring your ancestors, please let what you say line up with what you do. So it's already been said that you are dishonoring your ancestors if you're not tying into them and then tying into the land. You're dishonoring your ancestors if you are in violation of tribal law. You're dishonoring your ancestors if you're calling yourself a chief and you didn't earn that title. So at the end of the day, that's basically what it boils down to. And Golden Moon, I understand what you're saying. You're still finding your people as a lot of us are. But you know, it's not like you're being dishonorable. You know what I'm saying? So you're still going to be looking for your people, and that's what you should be doing. And our goal here is to help you. So continue to look for your people and then tie into your tribe. And what you'll find is once you do that, a lot of your questions will get answered. And again, like I said, if you come across a tribe that you're not a part of, but they need our help, let us know. And we will make sure that we let that tribe know that you were the reason why we're helping them, which will then endear them to you. Because now that you've helped them, they'll help you. So, is there anything I'm missing? Is there anything anybody want to say before we head out?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of touch on what you just mentioned. Golden Moon, I don't want you to lead the chat misunderstanding that anything that I've said to be misinterpreted. What I mean by being dishonorable is when you're purposely going out and being deceitful, and you're not encouraging anyone to find out who they are. Find out who they are. Find out who you are. That if you're still in search of who you are, that is how you honor your ancestors, because you're trying to discover more of who you are. You've seen so many movies. I give the example of Hancock. Remember Hancock? He was literally going all over the place because he didn't know who he was. We said, I don't know who I am. And even the woman that was supposedly so-called his wife still never did something throughout that whole movie. She never told him his name. Never told him his name. Your name is sacred. You can have what's called a name that you see on your birth certificate, but then there's a sacred name that the elders give you. What is your name? Because that defines who you are. And when you say that name, when people call me, they can call me certain things, but when they call me by we say the common terms, my nickname, which is actually my sacred name, yes. I know that they know me and they know my folk. Even if I don't know who they are, they know my people in order to call me by that name.
Yeah, facts.
So that's what I mean by being dishonorable, when you go out of your way and say, oh man, we did all this, we did all that. And I'm going to go on record and I'm going to say this. Not one Choctaw, which even goes back to Mesoamerica, has ever built a pyramid. Never. Because we were what you would call today your shamans and your medicine men and your medicine women, the elders, which the elders were the women, and your healers were the men. So when people got hurt or injured when they were building the pyramids, that's where we came in. We were the medics. So not one Choctaw, not one Rabbit clan built the pyramid. So when, like I say, it still narrows down to who you are. And when you find out who you are and you start talking to your people, they'll start telling you certain things and everything will start to make sense. All those questions that you have will be answered
when you're just sitting at the feet of the elders, like we used to do. That's how we used to learn. We would sit on our grandparents' porch and sit down, and they would talk to us all day. Some of us would tune them out because we were little. I don't want to hear that. You told that story 20 times. But now, as you get older, all those stories and all that wisdom starts to come back, and it all starts to make sense. And people say, well, you know, you claim you got Indian. I'll go further than that. I don't want people to say, oh, I got Indian in me. No, you are Indian. You are Indian. Because they will tell you, baby, we always been here. And you never hear about slave stories. You may hear about them picking cotton, but guess what? We were picking cotton long before the European came over here. We were picking hemp and making clothes out of hemp and cotton long before the European got over here. So don't equate picking cotton, picking hemp, picking tobacco, picking corn with being a slave. We were already doing these things long before the European came. I yield the mic.
Boom, bang, connect. Anything you wanted to add? No sellout? Wow.
I guess he's speechless right now. I want to say, Grand Rising to Copper Color Queen. Hope you're doing well.
Speechless. Peace, Graham.
So, you know, again, hopefully everybody has a better understanding of what A2 is about versus what A2 is not about.
Rising.
We're about solutions. We're about things that you can do today to help yourself, your community, and your tribe. That's why, you know, one of the mantras is where the real work is done. It's about activity. It's about action. It's about going out in the community and doing everything that you can to help those around you. It's about being selfless instead of selfish. It's about focusing on the things that you can share versus focusing on the things that are secret and that are sacred and not sharing anything. It's about tying into your tribe. It's about being able to use your talents and abilities to help your tribe. It's about, if you so choose, allowing us to help you and your tribe. Again, everything's a choice. We're not here to tell somebody that they're an Indian. We're not here to tell somebody they're not from Africa. We're not here to tell anybody anything. We're here to help those who have heard that they are Indian find their family, find their tribe. That's what we're here for. That is our primary mission. And to help these Indians and these tribes become self-sufficient. Anything outside of that, we're not dealing with it. We don't want to be bothered with it.
No.
So, you know, we keep it simple. And then keeping it simple is going to make our job a lot easier. And it's going to hopefully make your journey a lot easier. So, that's all I got, Bones.
No. Just to add on to it, spread the info on to as many as possible. You're not to enforce it, just spread it. If you learn something today that helped you, pass it on to help someone for tomorrow. And if we keep doing this, person by person, step by step, we can make sure 7 generations from now can have better days and never know what this tastes like. Yes, it's going to be hard. Yes, it's going to be rough. But on everything we've been through in our story, you trying to tell me we just can't get this done? Out of all the sacrifices those before them made, we can't make this small one? And that's basically all I got to add on it. I mean, I feel energized. I can't speak for nobody else. What about you, No Sellout? Anything?
Ooh, man. I hope y'all heard all of that. If not, it's been recorded. Just run it back. They said everything. Email us at attentionassembly@gmail.com if you have any questions, need any help, need anything. Peace, y'all.
Now I do want to address Gotamon. He says, I do have both sides of my family willing to have a sit down with information I gather. So I thank you guys. Yeah, if we got your email address, we'll reach out to you. If we don't, please put it in the chat so we can actually reach out. So with that, I'm done. Go ahead, Bones.
Like you say, it's been fun, always entertaining and enjoyable with the relatives. Until the next Rising show, peace.
Peace, y'all.